should be one connected to here.
CVGA. Unless you have a
spread out. So there are going to be activities where you're going to need to come together, so don't be shy about getting up and moving around. I know you aren't, especially all of you. So thank you for joining us on Saturday. I'm going to stay over here because I got ready for flag football, which is my next event after this one. Not me playing, all of the kids. Yeah, don't go watch because you won't see anything spectacular from me. Go to see the kids. But welcome, and we're super glad to have you here. I do want to give a quick reminder, unfortunately or fortunately, if you brought things with you to eat and you do not eat them all, we are still obligated to sort everything. And if you don't sort it, I will be. So please make sure, just as a little catch-all, if you need help, let me know, and I will take care of it before, you have to deal with it later. So, with that being said, we're happy to have Katie here to share and go through conscious classroom management. We've had Grace present on this before, and some of you came last year, and so we're glad to see some of you back. And for those of you who weren't, you're in for some great information and ideas. So without further ado, I'll let Katie introduce herself.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much. Oh, look at you go. Thank you guys for being here on a Saturday. When I asked, like, oh, so are they volunteered today or are they voluntold today? And heard that you guys actually volunteered to come and do some school training on a Saturday. I was like, I've got the hardcore crew today. So thank you guys very much for being here. My name is Katie Anderson. Hello. And I'm here today with you guys from North Carolina. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a minute, but first I want to get to know you. So I've got all my elementary school teachers here today. In your district, is that K-6 or K-5? K-6. K-6, fantastic. So where are my K-2 teachers at? Hands up. Awesome, thank you. And my 3-6 teachers? Brilliant, wonderful. Thank you, hands down. And if you feel like this is your first year of teaching, if you decide for yourself how many years of experience you have and you think, this is my first year, hands up, please. Oh, a hand for these folks. Yay! Wonderful. We can do better than that for first year teachers, my friends. Thank you. All right, fantastic. All right. And then if this is, let's say, year 2 through 5 for you, hands up. Awesome. Thank you for staying. They deserve a round of applause, too. And how about 6 to 12? Yes? Okay. Really awesome. Thank you for being here. Any lifers, 13 or more? What's up, guys? Well done. Thank you. We can do better than that for our long-term teachers. All right. So I like starting off with applause. I love the sound of spontaneous applause in the morning. It's a glorious thing. So throughout the day today, anytime you hear something that resonates with you, that you feel good about, please do feel free to break into spontaneous applause at any time. And in addition to that, there's another sound that you can make when you hear something that makes you happy or sounds good to you, and it goes like this, woohoo! So let's hear that. Woohoo! That's not too bad for a Saturday morning. I'll let it go. All right, fantastic. So anytime today that you feel like breaking into those, please do feel free to do so. It's gonna be a pretty informal day, my friends. We're gonna be having a lot of conversations, talking to each other. Now, just from my knowledge, I know that Rick was here in August. How many of you attended the training with Rick?
Well, not in August.
Cool, dear. Not in August, it was?
Before.
Before, okay. How many of you attended that training with Rick? Wonderful. He is wonderful and amazing. He trained me, so you'll have to report back to him on how you think I did. All right, so that is you guys. I'm so glad to meet you. I've got classroom teachers, special ed. Yeah, thank you, rockstar. And then what about specialists? Art, music, PE, world languages? Not today, that's good because my chime has a discordant note. That's wonderful. And did anybody that I miss at this time? Job, pardon me? AIDS, where are those wonderful AIDS? Yes. We could not do it without you. All right, fantastic. So thank you for letting me know a little bit about you guys. I will tell you a little bit about myself. So I told you I did come from North Carolina. As you can see from my fancy slide up here, I am a National Board Certified teacher. I'm a teacher just like you guys. I spent 15 years in the classroom back in Wake County in North Carolina. That's in the Raleigh area. North Carolina, where we were marching for better working conditions. North Carolina, Wake County, where we were on the Colbert Report and the Daily Show. Not for good reasons. So, yeah, you saw it. Y'all can YouTube that at the break. So, have been there, done that, been in your shoes. It's not an easy thing that we do. It's not an easy job that we do. And I actually came into this training because I went to this training, and it changed the way that I taught and the way that I thought about teaching so much that I just had to get involved with it and be a part of bringing it to other people too. So, worked in Wake County. I've worked with all grade levels, K through 12, but my heart is in elementary. My classroom experience is all in elementary. I did secondary with Duke TIP program, which is Duke University's program for gifted middle schoolers and high schoolers. Did some curriculum design, taught classes for them. But when I was in my classroom, it was all elementary. So I love coming to talk to elementary school teachers. I don't tell my secondary teachers that my heart's really in elementary, but that's where it is. So I'm glad to be here with you guys today. So that's me. I've got 2 kids of my own. I've got a 5th grader and a 3rd grader. They are wonderful. They hate school, so I try really hard to help them love it more because I know how hard their teachers work. Like, Mom, you always take the teacher's side. Yes, I do. And let's see, a dog, a cat, 2 snakes, and in all of my free time, I'm also an aerialist and a fire eater.
Wow.
No, I'm not kidding. People always think I'm lying or making it up, so I bring pictures. And the reason that I share this with you guys today is not to be like, ooh, look, fire. It's because out of all of the weird, funky things that I do and my strange hobbies, and we haven't even scratched the surface, my friends, the thing that takes the most dedication and the most courage and the most heart is not hanging upside down by my ankles or sticking a flaming torch in my face. It's teaching. It takes everything I have all day, every day, and I think people don't understand how much of ourselves we put into this job. So I don't know how it is in California, but I know that in North Carolina, we don't get told thank you nearly as much as we ought to. So from one person in the trenches to another, guys, thank you for what you're doing for kids. It's so obvious how dedicated you are. Look where you are early on a Saturday morning. So thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do for kids every single day. There's no job in the world that makes more of a difference than what you do. So thank you, guys. Thank you. Yes, for you guys. Yeah, this is actually my first year out of the classroom, and it feels really weird. 15 years I spent in the classroom, and then Rick and Grace, once I started working for them, were like, leave your classroom, work for us full time, work for us full time. And it took a lot of shenanigans from my school district and my state before I finally said, you know what? Okay, fine. So I love that I'm still getting to teach. I could never get all the way out of teaching because I love it so much. But it's really wonderful to have teachers as my students now because I know what y'all are going through and I know how hard it is. This changed the way that I taught. It changed so many things for me, and I hope it will do the same for you. So let's start by talking about goals, okay? You guys all came here because you wanted to. So in a moment when I say go, I'm going to invite everyone to stand. You don't need anything in your hands. You're going to stand, find someone who is not sitting at your table, introduce yourself, and you're going to have a 62-second conversation about what your goals are for being here today. What do you hope to get out of today? Questions about what I want you to do or who I want you to do it with? All right, 62 seconds. Ready and go.
reminded of what it is I'm supposed to be doing. So I thought
All right, welcome back. Before we take our seats, I have a request for you. Since they set up so many extra tables, I would very much appreciate it as you are thanking your partners and returning to your seats. If you're sitting way in the back, if you would maybe move yourself to these front little tables, these center tables, I would appreciate that because this mic doesn't pick up my voice very well, and then I have to shout less, and I'm all about shouting less. So at this time, please thank your partners, find your seat. If you're willing to move, I would appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for that. All right. So as we are moseying back to our seats, I want to introduce to you my chime. You got to hear it. It was kind of quiet because I had it set on the equipment, which I'm going to do again. But this is my chime. This is what it looks like. And this is what it sounds like. All right. And the chime, of course, means that we are all now on the 4th floor of Macy's. Woohoo! Oh, thank you for laughing. This is a terrible joke, but they don't get any better, my friends. So, the chime is something that I used in my classroom as a sound signal to get everybody's attention back. So much of what we do in our classrooms is left brain centric. We're asking our students to compute and compose. We're asking them to have conversations and discuss things with each other. So if I then want to use a left brain type of signal to get their attention back, something like my voice, I have to go above the already existing left brain noise of what they're trying to do. So what very quickly happens is, I'm going, okay class, everybody, boys and girls, hey, guys! And before you know it, I'm escalating it, and the students are like, what do we do? Because they weren't ignoring me, they just couldn't hear me because their left brains were already engaged. So when I use something like a sound signal, it cuts through the left-brained noise. I can be much quieter and much gentler, much easier for my students to recognize it. So that's why I like to use this. Now this doesn't have to be what you use. This came from the very exotic boutique of Amazon.com, my friends. But you can use a wind chime, you can use a dog squeaky toy, whatever you don't mind hearing several times a day. So when you do hear the chime, just as you did before, take a little pause, direct your attention back to the front, because we're going to have some new instructions. I'm going to put this here. That's right. Yes, thank you. All right, fantastic. So you had an opportunity to talk with your new friends about your goals for today. I also have a goal wherever I go, and whoever I'm teaching, my goal is always the same. And in a moment when I share my goal with you, if it in any way overlaps with or aligns with your goal, I would like you to please break into wild applause, because I've been secure. So, hands in the pre-applause position if you don't mind, because I do think you're going to like this. As my goal today is simply to give you stuff you can use. Because after 15 years in the classroom, I've sat through a lot of professional development, y'all. So many meetings, workshops, every latest, greatest that was coming out, I was there for that training. And I always had other things I could be doing. There was always something else in my classroom that needed my attention. But I always also felt like if I could just come away with one or two concrete, practical things from that workshop or training or meeting, things that I could take back and use right away to help me in my classroom and make my life easier, make my students' lives easier, then that would have been time well spent. So that's my goal for today, is to give those things to you. And I'm talking about stuff you can use without having to spend 12 hours preparing lesson plans for it. Yeah. And I wish, thank you. Say it. Because that's not helpful. If this is going to make your life easier after you do a whole bunch of work. No. Stuff you can use without having to go and spend $100 at Target or Teachers Pay Teachers to buy little doodads to make it work. It's just stuff you can take back and you can start using on Monday. So that is my goal for us today. So let's talk about our ground rules for today. These are not going to be your typical ground rules because let's face it, we're all adults here. If you need to get up and use the restroom, it's right there. You don't have to ask for permission or feel like you're going to be rude. Just go. It's fine. If you have your technology out today, your cell phones, your laptops, and you're using it to take notes, by all means carry on. If you are not using it to take notes, please go ahead and put it away. I'm a neuroscience nerd, and neuroscience teaches us that the brain can only pay attention to one thing at a time. So you're either on your phone or you're with me, and I would prefer you to be here with me today because you're giving up your Saturday to be here. So if you don't mind that, that'd be wonderful. I will give you technology breaks so that you can take that time, check in with your loved ones, see what the latest cats on YouTube are up to, all that good stuff, okay? We will have technology breaks, I promise you, so thank you very much for that consideration. So today, it's going to be very active. We're going to be getting up, we're going to be moving, we're going to be talking to each other, you're going to be talking to your colleagues, talking to me. We're going to have music. There is so much great research out there about the effectiveness of music in your classroom. Don't have time in a half day to go over all of that research with you, but just to let you know, it can be really empowering, it can be really engaging in the classroom, with one exception, and that exception is if the music gets too loud. So I'm going to be running the music off my phone. I am not on my phone or texting, I'm actually running the music off my phone today. If at any time the music becomes a distraction, rather than something that is just improving the feel of the room, please let me know. I'm happy to turn it down, okay? Let's see what else. We are going to not just do the sit and get, because I hate sit and get. So we're going to be getting up, we're going to be moving around, we're going to be engaging with each other. And I have my personal commitment to teachers, which usually gets me my biggest woohoo of the day, and here's what it is. Guys, I promise I will never, ever, ever end a workshop late. Yeah. So we're scheduled to end at what time today, everybody? 11:30. You're too honest. Yes, 11:30 is what I have too. So I promise you that by 11:29 and 48 seconds, I will be done. Even though I've done the teacher thing and I've planned for way more than we have time for, at 11:29 and 48 seconds, I will be done. And that last 12 seconds, of course, is important for checking those text messages, being with your loved ones, and doing that year-long curriculum design and planning. Yeah. So let's jump in. I want you guys to think about today like a buffet, okay? When you go to a buffet, there are lots of different choices out there. Some of them you see, you're like, that looks fantastic, I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to put it on my plate. And then some things you walk by and you say, I have no idea what that is, and I want no part of it. And you'll leave it there on the buffet line. So I'm going to present you with tons of new ideas and strategies for your classroom today. But I'm not here today because I'm a bigger or better expert on your classroom than you are. I'm not. You are the expert when it comes to your kids and your school and the needs of your students and your staff. So take what I give to you today, and if something sounds good to you and compatible with the needs of your students and compatible with the way that you teach, pick it up and put it on your plate. If there's something that I'm talking about today and you're like, that would not work in my classroom for XYZ reason, that's totally fine. Go ahead and leave it on the buffet line. My goal today is to make sure that your plate is full, but what you put on it is up to you because you are the expert in your classroom. I will encourage you to think about stepping slightly outside your comfort zone and maybe trying one thing that you would normally say, ooh, I don't know about that. Give it a try, because we sometimes find, and our students do as well, that the most growth happens when we get just a little bit outside of our comfort zone. So let's go ahead and jump in. I want to talk with you first about this idea of inner authority, because if I was your teacher and you were all my students, and I got up in front of you and I said, okay guys, can we please turn our books to page 27? Page 27? What do you think is going to happen? I'm live and you can talk to me.
Maybe one or two kids will turn and the
Maybe
rest will
one,
not.
yeah, maybe one or two kids will turn to page 27. We've got the eager beavers next. It's like, oh boy, page 27. And everybody else, we have no idea, right? Much more likely to get what I want from my class if instead I say something like this. All right, class, let's turn our books to page 27. Same words, but a very, very different result. There is, I suggest, an invisible quality that permeates every moment that we spend with our students, and not just those tough disciplinary moments, but every moment that we spend with our students. And over time, we've kind of developed the idea of this continuum, and on one side, we've got inner apology, and on the other, we've got inner authority. And inner apology is this place where it's like we're almost asking our students permission to be their teachers. Would you please do these things that I want you to do if you don't mind too much, students? And on the other side, we have inner authority. And inner authority is not authority in the mean sense of the word, but simply in the sense that we as the teachers are the authors of what happens in the classroom. Now, my lovely aides, I'm going to use the word teachers talk to everybody in the room today because I mean it in the most noble sense of the word teacher. Every person in this room affects children and influences and impacts children. So when I say teacher, I'm talking to everybody, whatever your job description may be. So inner authority, we have these teachers out there, and some of them are just steeped in inner authority. They're just naturally really good classroom managers. And sometimes we go to these people, we seek them out when we're struggling. We say, man, I have got this third grader, this kid is driving me nuts. What would you do? And these teachers who are steeped in inner authority, they always say the same thing, don't they? Well, my students know I simply would not tolerate such behavior. Well, I don't tolerate it either, but they still do it. So what do? How can we move ourselves from a place of inner apology into that place of inner authority in our classrooms? First of all, a visual for you. When you are feeling like that poor, defenseless little fluffy kitten, remind yourself to embrace that Mufasa-like lion inside of yourself, because you are the author of what happens in your classroom. One of the most delightful comments I got from yesterday was, you're the author of what happens in your classroom, so write a good story. I thought that was fantastic, so I wanted to share that with you guys today. Things that we can do. Experience helps. But it's not that new teachers are always hanging out over an inner apology and veteran teachers are always an inner authority. That's not how it works at all. It can change from day to day. It can change during the same lesson, depending on what happens in your classroom. How about you're in the middle of teaching and you're feeling great about it? Your principal walks in and all of a sudden we're scooting down into inner apology. Oh my gosh, am I doing a good job or not? It can change. So one of the things that we can do is reflect on those things that might tend to put us in a place of inner apology. Yeah, but Katie, why would we focus on what would put us in inner apology? Why wouldn't we think about how we could be those Mufasa-like lions in inner authority? Well, because when we think about what would move us toward inner apology, we're kind of forewarned and forearmed for when those situations pop up in our classroom. In neuroscience terms, it's called the Clang effect, and it's the reason that when we have our kids take those lovely standardized tests, we sometimes teach them to read the questions first and then go back and read the passage. It preps the brain to know what to look for. So when we think about what might put us in inner apology, we are more prepared for when those situations actually happen to us in our classroom. So when you have this conversation, here's an example of what I'm talking about. Please raise your hand for me, and I will be super honest in this too. If you have ever taught your students something that you just learned for yourself the night before. I did an entire science unit like that once, y'all, not gonna lie. All right, so that can tend to put us in inner apology when we feel less comfortable with the material. I don't know how your district does it, but in Wake County, they would change the curriculum every 5 years. And it would be one different subject, like every year. So every couple of years, it was a new set of objectives and a new curriculum. And that would put us all in inner apology, because we're like, wait, what are we doing now? We had the old one down. How about this one? Raise your hand for me if you have ever had to enforce a school rule with which you did not personally agree. Yeah. Now that's a tricky one, because if we're in a place of inner authority, we say to our class, all right, class, let's follow the rule, even though we don't agree with it. 5 seconds later, the rule is followed and we're moving on. But if I'm in a place of inner apology with this, I might say to my class, okay, so guys, there's this rule and we kind of have to follow it, and I know that you don't agree with it. And actually, I don't agree with it either, but we kind of have to follow it, okay? And what do the kids hear? Wait a minute. We don't agree with it. You don't agree with it. We're not going to do it. And precisely 6 seconds later, you've got chaos. So, as you're having these discussions, you're going to have them with your table members. Think about what might put you in inner apology, or something that has happened that you realize now has put you into that place of inner apology. You're going to turn and talk with 2 or 3 or 4 other people near you at your tables. I'm going to give you 43 seconds for this. Questions about what I want you to do? All right, 43 seconds, ready and go. vulnerable enough to talk about a time that you either were or fear to be in inner apology. It's not always comfortable to think about things that we have done and that we wish we had done differently, or things that we realize, oh wait, I could have done a better job at that. But when we do that and when we reflect on it, it makes us stronger teachers. And it's great for us too to model that to our students, because I've noticed over the last 15 years that students come into school more and more afraid of making mistakes. They feel like it's not okay to be wrong. And we've kind of lost sight of the fact that school is a place where you come to learn things that you don't know. So when we show our students that it's okay to make mistakes, and that the point is not making the mistake, but what you do to come back from it, that's a powerful gift we can give to our students. So don't be afraid to share those things with your students as well. So we've reflected, we're going to talk in a moment about assuming the best. And this is a really foundational piece. Everything else that we talk about today is going to come from this place of assuming the best. So we'll unpack that in a moment. We're going to talk today about procedures. It's not up here, but I still want us to talk about holding ground in our classrooms. Why? Because we have to do it all day, every single day. So we're going to spend some time with that because it's a valuable piece. We're going to talk about procedures and how to make things more efficient in the classroom. We're going to talk about making positive connections, even with that kid. You know the one I'm talking about. And then eventually we're going to talk about consequences. And people a lot of the times when they come to a workshop on classroom management, go, but consequences, that's what I need. I want the exotic new consequence. There's not an exotic new consequence, because if there was, we'd all know what it was, and you wouldn't need this workshop. We're not going to talk about exotic new consequences, but we are going to talk about a way to approach consequences and how we give them and how we deal with students who need them. But we have to go through the other pieces first. A lot of times people are like, but consequences, that's what I really, really need. And that's great, and I promise I will give it to you. But trust that we need the other pieces first, because that's going to inform how we deal with consequences. So most of our things today are going to be of a preventative nature. How do we prevent issues before they even happen in our classrooms? But then we are going to go into some intervention strategies with our positive connections with difficult students and our consequences. But I'll tell you something, the more I taught, the more I kind of felt like, you know, consequences are really meant to prevent future misbehaviors. So honestly, I kind of like to think of them all as being preventative strategies. But that's just me. Put that on, see if you like it. If not, leave it on the buffet. And let's talk about assuming the best. So assuming the best. These are assumptions that we make as teachers about our students that can really kind of change our mindset and the way that we deal with students when they are presenting us with difficulties within our classroom. Now, the first assumption is this: teachers teach content, procedures, and behavior. Content, procedures, and behavior. And I know that those glorious state-mandated tests that we all take in the spring do not measure how well we teach our students procedures and behavior. I also know that we have those pacing guides that we are tied to. The ones that you look down at 2 weeks into school and realize you're already 5 weeks behind. Even after 15 years, I still always felt that way. However, if we assume that we're in our classrooms to teach content, procedures, and behavior, we can actually find ourselves with more quality time for content. We'll talk more about that later today. If I think to myself, I'm just in this room to teach content, that's my job, I've got this train of content, I've got to keep it moving, then I very quickly begin to perceive any disruption in my classroom as disrespect and defiance. And very quickly I grow to resent any student that's getting in the way of my train of content. So if I have in my classroom, for example, her name? Susan. Susan is in my classroom, and Susan needs to put it away and have a seat. Susan, just sit there and be fabulous. I'm just going to use your name, okay? So if I think that I'm only in that room to teach content, and I'm teaching, let's say, the California Gold Rush, discipline might look like this. All right, class, in 1848, gold was discovered, Susan. Gold was discovered in the California hills. Did you catch the discipline? Yeah? Do you think Susan caught the discipline? Do you think it is likely that Susan put it away and had a seat?
No.
No! Because, guys, that was barely even a stop to pause on that discipline. That was what I like to call drive-by discipline, okay? I barely paused because I was focused on the content. Susan probably didn't even hear me say her name. And even if she did, she certainly doesn't know what I want from her. So if I assume that I'm in my classroom to teach content, procedures, and behavior, then instead it might look like this. All right, class, in 1848, gold was discovered. Susan, please put that away and have a seat. Thank you. Wow, did you see that? She put her water bottle down. Susan, you're amazing. Thank you. A hand for Susan. So it didn't take that much more time. I wasn't having to stop my content for a significant amount of time. But what a difference that made. Poor Susan wasn't doing a thing wrong. She's like, yes, ma'am, put away my water bottle. So clearly, this time, Susan caught the discipline. And can I guarantee that Susan put it away and had a seat this time? I wish. No, this is teaching. We can't guarantee anything. But it is so much more likely that she heard my message loud and clear, and I'm so much more likely to get compliance when I present it the way that I did just then. So the way that I presented it just then is with a strategy called volume, tone, and posture. And when you have to discipline a student from across the room, volume, tone, and posture can make all the difference. So let me say this about that. It's never ideal to discipline a student from across the room, right? Ideally, I would approach Susan and have a quiet conversation with her. But the realities of teaching are such that from time to time, I'm going to have to discipline students from across the room. So when I do, volume, tone, and posture can help make that more effective for me. So the first thing is volume. My volume is going to drop. A lot of us have our I'm excited teacher voice, and we're talking loudly so everyone can hear us. So drop your volume. The second thing that happened was my tone dropped. I was talking about the California Gold Rush, and now I'm talking to Susan. It conveys seriousness. It conveys, this is important. I expect you to be listening to me right now. And the third thing I did was nonverbal. I squared my posture off to Susan. It's a nonverbal that communicates, listen to this, and I do expect compliance. So all of those three things are going to come together to make it more likely that my student is going to do what I need them to do. And I hear in some of your heads the yeah, but Katie. I have a kid in my class, and if I square off to this student, they are going to see it as confrontational, and this is going to escalate things and make it worse. And that's true. Some students will view it that way. So when you have that student, you can still use this strategy, but instead of squaring off the way I did to Susan, I'm going to adopt a more gentle posture. I'm going to turn myself to the side and still look at Susan, but it's just a little bit more gentle for those students who would think that you were coming for them if you are straight on face-to-face with them. So with all of these strategies today, if there is a way that you feel like, well, that almost works, but I need to change it like this or that, please feel free to do so. Nothing I'm sharing with you guys today is set in stone. It's just like scraping the cheese off of something on a buffet or pulling the cilantro off because you don't like it. So whatever you need to do to make this your own, please do feel free to do so. I'd rather have you alter something and be able to use it than do it as is and have it not be of value to you. So we're in California. Who's ever been to the ocean? Show of hands? That's about what I expected. Okay. You go to Nebraska and you don't see that. But you guys have been to the ocean. Has anyone ever just tried to get past the waves by running straight through them? Who's tried that? I know somebody has. Yeah, how'd that work out for you?
Not so well.
Not so well. So what happened when you did that?
Usually get hit in the face, straight on, knocked down a couple times, rolled around.
Hit in the face, knocked down, rolled around. Okay, so what is a more effective way? If you want to get out past the waves, what's an easier way to do that than charging through head on? Yeah. You dive underneath them. It's so much more gentle. You go underneath. It's easy. You don't get rolled. Your hair doesn't get all in your face. You just get nice and pushed back like a Disney princess in the water. It's great. So when we go underneath the waves, it's such a gentler way to do it, and we still accomplish what we're setting out to do. And the same thing is true of the waves of student resistance. If we try to charge headlong into a student that we perceive to be misbehaving and disrupting our classroom, it's just like trying to charge into a wave, okay? We're going to antagonize the student. We're not going to get what we want. When we make everything a power struggle in our classroom, we're not going to be successful and we're not going to create the classroom environment that we want and need to have. So volume, tone, and posture is one thing you can do to help you go under the waves of student resistance. Now, assumption number 2 is radical, so please bear with me. Students want to learn appropriate behavior. Yeah, I said it. They want to learn appropriate behavior, and I know that they don't always act like it. And I know that maybe some of them never act like it. But if we as the teachers assume that the students do want to learn appropriate behavior, it changes everything about how we interact with them. If I assume that my students want to learn appropriate behavior, then when I see a student that is misbehaving, it's not that they're being disrespectful to me, it's that they need something from me to help them get to where they need to be. And that's huge. I think of it like this. I imagine that every student that ever walks into my classroom has an invisible contract in their hand. And their part of the contract says, teacher, please teach me appropriate behavior in a safe and structured environment today. And my part of the contract says, kiddo, I will do my very best to teach you appropriate behavior in a safe and structured environment today. So let's test this then against your personal experience. Please raise your hand for me if you have ever in your teaching career had a student approach you and say, excuse me, teacher, would you please teach me appropriate behavior in a safe and structured environment today? Thank you so much. Crickets, okay. That's the thing, guys. Our students are not going to verbalize this to us. Because maybe they can't, maybe they don't realize that that's what they need, but I guarantee you that all students, whatever grade level, whatever their ability level, whatever their background, all students crave this from us. So I imagine that these students come into my classroom with this invisible contract in their hand. I have my student, Rhonda. Rhonda walks into my classroom, she is clutching her invisible contract in her hand. But Rhonda doesn't know me. She doesn't know if I can be trusted to uphold my end of the contract. So Rhonda is going to give me an opportunity. Rhonda is going to break a small rule. Now, if I come down like a ton of bricks on Rhonda and I'm really mean about it, then in her head, Rhonda is thinking, this classroom is not safe, and my teacher cannot be trusted to hold up her end of the contract, and that is not okay. If, however, I ignore the fact that Rhonda has broken this small rule, then in her head, Rhonda is thinking, well, this classroom is not structured, and that's not okay. And my teacher can clearly not be trusted to hold up her end of the contract. But the contract is really important to Rhonda, so Rhonda is going to give me another chance. She's going to break a slightly larger rule, and Rhonda will continue to break larger and larger and larger rules in my classroom, until I come through for her consistently with both safety and structure. Safety and structure are our 2 pillars of effective classroom management. All kids need it. They crave it from us, even when they don't say it, even when they don't act like they want it. This is what we need to be providing. Safety and structure. When I have a student that is misbehaving in my classroom and I'm assuming the best about my kid, if they're not doing what I want them to do, it's not because they're being blatantly disrespectful, it's because something is preventing them from feeling safe and structured enough in my classroom to be able to do that thing. So if I can help provide that safety and structure, they'll be successful in doing it. Raise your hand if you're familiar with the idea that students will test us as teachers. Yeah. Now, here's the great thing about assuming the best. If I assume that my students want to learn appropriate behavior, then I can also assume that when my students test me, they want me to pass the test. When your students test you, they want you to pass the test. And that's huge, because now we're all on the same side. And that changes everything. It's not an easy thing to internalize, because sometimes it's really irritating when we have to prove ourselves to students over and over and over again. We have some students that walk into our classroom with their invisible contracts, and they are already ready to trust us. We come through for them one time, they're like, good, I'm great. But that was exciting. But other students walk in, And they have this constantly cramping muscle. And it's that need and that desire for a positive connection with an adult role model, namely you. And until that is fulfilled, it's very distracting. If you've ever had a muscle cramp, you know how distracting that is. When we come through for them with safety and structure, that can relax. And now they've got the bandwidth to actually learn from us. I think of it like this. Every student that comes to us has in their head this radio receiver, and it's constantly tuning into this noise of what it means to be a kid. It's that desire for instant gratification. It's that pressure to fit in and belong. Younger and younger, our students are really feeling the force of peer pressure and needing to be cool and needing to not look stupid in front of their peers, even in the elementary setting. And they tune into that noise, and they're like, oh, what does it mean to be cool? Okay, I can't care about school. I have to cut up in class. And the thing is that if they tune into that noise for long enough, they can start to believe that that's who they really are. And if we tune into that noise, then we can start to believe that that's who our students really are. But I also believe that all students have in their heart a radio beacon that's sending out a very different message if we just listen to it. And it's saying, you know what, I really actually do want to learn and participate with you. And maybe I can't say that to you, and maybe I can't behave that way for whatever reason. We don't always know what baggage our kids are coming to school with. Why haven't you done your homework for the last 3 days? And the kid says, I don't know. And really it's because the lights are off in their house. They're not going to tell us that. We've got to assume the best. If we pay attention to what the kids are saying out of that radio beacon, I want to learn, I want to participate, it softens our response to them, even in those tougher moments. And that radio receiver is what kids say that they want, and we have to pay attention to that because our kids are developing and growing into the people that they're going to become. It's a noise and it's not a fun part of growth, but it is part of growth. I see it all the time with my 9-year-old and my 11-year-old, and I spend a lot of time just doing, this is developmentally appropriate, this is developmentally appropriate, this is developmentally appropriate, I'm going to kill him, this is developmentally appropriate. Because it is an unpleasant part of growth. But we've got to pay attention to it because it helps them grow into the people they're going to become. But our real job as teachers is to make sure that we are giving them what they need. When I was first learning about this and trying to internalize it, I decided to think of all of my students as being in a kung fu movie. Stay with me, I have a point. In this kung fu movie, I need subtitles, right? There are things that my students say that drive me bonkers. And the biggest one is, I don't care. It lights me up every single time. Because in my head, I take that very personally. I spent 6 hours planning this activity for you, and I have been on Pinterest and Teachers Pay Teachers, and I went to the dollar store and got all these things, and then I had to go to another dollar store because I didn't have enough, and you don't care? And then I would say something like, well, you're gonna care when it's on the test. Not my proudest moment. But then when I thought about, okay, what is this kid really saying? If I assume the best about this kid, what does this kid really say? And I realized that what this kid might really be saying is, you know what, I really, really do care. But I can't tell you that. For whatever reason. How much do you care? And that very quickly changed the way that I wanted to respond to that child. So if I assume that my student is saying, you know what, I do care, I can't tell you, how much do you care? Then instead of wanting to come back with a snappy comeback, very quickly I want to respond to that subtitle that student has said to me. And it leads me instead to say something like, you know what, it's okay because I do care. And I can care enough for both of us right now. So let's do this. And this kid that was expecting to be met with a reprimand or a punishment is instead met with compassion and understanding and love. And they do this. Okay. It softens how we respond to our student, and when we are able to do that and respond to our students in a gentle way, it changes how they then respond to us. So in a moment when I say go, you're going to spend some time thinking about subtitles in your table groups. I want you to think about those things that your students say that just get underneath your skin and really bug you. What's the subtitle? If we assume the best, what might your student really be saying? And how can you then respond to the subtitle instead of the words that your student is saying? So in your tables, you're going to be coming up with the things that are up here in red. I'm going to give you 1 minute and 12 seconds for this, and yes, I will tell you why I'm doing such weird intervals of time. There's a method to my madness. But for now, in your table groups, 1 minute and 12 seconds to come up with your own subtitles. Questions about what I want you to do? All right, ready and go. Welcome back. So I'm very curious to hear some of the phrases that drive you guys bonkers. What's something you came up with at your tables? Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. Right? And then what do we say? Well, which part don't you get? All of it. All right, so you said, I don't get it. What was the subtitle that you guys came up with together?
I think I was thinking that maybe it's, the answer didn't occur to me right away, so I gave up.
The answer didn't occur to me right away, so I gave up. I see a lot of nodding heads, yeah? Our students really, there's that desire for instant gratification. I've seen it get worse over the last 15 years. Like, if I don't know the answer, I don't know anything.
Right.
I'm not going to try anymore. So what could you say then in response to that subtitle?
Maybe let's read the problem again.
Sure.
Let's look for keywords.
Yeah, offering support strategies to help them get it. I saw a hand over here, yeah?
I was gonna share.
Go for it, yeah.
I have a student, several. I'm not good at such and such. Yes.
I'm not good at, and I think I heard you say when I was walking by, I can't.
Right.
Yes, you can, right? And what did you say you had your students respond back to that with?
Yet.
Yes. Are you guys familiar with the mindset work of Dr. Carol Dweck? It's great stuff. All right, so what is your subtitle then?
My subtitle is, now I'm thinking about one situation in general, I'm embarrassed to mess up.
Bingo. So many of our students are terrified of being wrong. They're terrified that their peers are going to laugh at them. They're terrified that we are going to think that they're stupid. So a lot of times they will avoid it as much as possible. I don't get it. I can't do it. And what they're really saying is, I don't know how to do this. I'm not confident in my ability to do this correctly. And that's terrifying to them. It's so much easier for a student not to try than to try and fail. If they choose not to even try, then they can tell themselves, oh, well, I could have done that, I just didn't want to. But if they try and they get it wrong, then their teacher sees that they didn't know, their peers they didn't know, and now they're feeling bad about themselves. Because they don't understand that it's okay not to know everything. It's okay not to get it right your first try. Did you come up with a response?
I think that the way I would like to approach that is just by reiterating, you have the strength to come to school today, knowing that you are going to learn, and we're all still learning. So it's okay to not have it yet.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Letting our students know it's okay to make mistakes. Letting our students know that it's actually really good to make mistakes, because mistakes are how we learn. Mistakes are proof that we are trying. And that's a huge thing. I spent several years of my teaching career working with gifted students. And you will never see a kid more afraid to get something wrong than a gifted student. And so something I found myself saying to them that, if you want to put it on your plate, please feel free to do so, was, you know what? It's okay that you don't know. It doesn't mean you're never going to know. It just means that I haven't found the way to explain it to you that makes sense to your brain yet. Because everybody's brain learns things differently. But I'm not going to give up until I find the right way to explain it so that your brain understands it. And you could just see these kids go, because suddenly it wasn't that they were failing or incapable, it was that we were still working together to find the right way. And I was always perfectly comfortable saying, sure, I will take that responsibility on myself, because it relaxed them enough and gave them the freedom to be wrong, and then all of a sudden they could do it. Not because I was magically explaining it any better, but because they were so much less scared. So a lot of these things that our students say to us really boil down to, I'm afraid of looking stupid, I don't understand, and I don't want people to make fun of me. So when we can answer that subtitle, we're going to get a lot further with our kids. So when you have this kid in your class, and I'm sure that at some point you've all had this kid in your class. Try, and it's hard, but I know you can do it. Focus on the invisible request. Understand that this noise this kid is making is a part of growth. This is how they grow into the people they're going to be. Focus on and respond to the invisible request. Think about your subtitles. Because clearly what this kid is saying right now is, what can I do right now to behave better? Before we move on, I want to let you guys know that sometimes these students that we keep working with will never show us what we want to see in return. We have kids that come in ready to trust us, and it's a piece of cake. And we have kids that we prove ourselves to day after day after day, but we never see back what we expect to see. But it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't worthwhile, and it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't making a difference. Some kids, because of whatever they have gone through, because of whatever past experiences they're bringing to the table, they need more than 1 year of being provided with that safety and structure before they can trust an adult. So just because you're not seeing that wonderful TV movie moment where the troubled student turns around and it's all because of what we've done for them, it doesn't mean it's not happening, we just can't see it. Sometimes what happens is we work with this kid all year and we struggle and we still don't get what we want. And then after the summer's over, this kid comes back to us and they're like, oh, hey, I hope you had a good summer. I missed you so much. You're my favorite teacher ever. And we go, what? Because of the way that they behaved in our class. But some kids, they need more than that here. Some kids just are waiting for us to give up on them because everybody else has. And it's going to take a long time to prove to them. It's not going to be one day like, yeah, you're like me today, but tomorrow you're going to give up on me because everyone else has. Okay, you've been nice to me for 3 months, but tomorrow you're going to give up on me because everybody else has. The other thing that I sometimes hear teachers say is, well, they just got to meet me halfway. My kids just got to meet me halfway. I'm right there, but they've got to meet me halfway. No, they don't. Some kids can't meet us halfway, and we don't always know the reasons why. But we've got to assume the best about our kids. We've got to be willing to meet them halfway, 75% of the way, 100% of the way for as long as it takes. And it might be our colleagues in the future grade levels that are going to benefit from all the hard work that we put in. And that's okay. Because we might be benefiting from another colleague's work. They may have worked with that kid that you have this year. And they worked with them all year to get them to a place where they come in and they sit down. And you would never have known that there was an issue last year. So trust in yourselves. Trust in these kids. And meet them as far along the way as they need. So in our module about stuff you can use, we talked about a lot of different things. I'm going to ask you to flip your handout over at this time. We're going to start a letter, Dear Future Self, or Dear Future Me, whatever you prefer. And I want you to think about what we talked about with Assume the Best. What one or two things are the most resonant with you? Which are the two things that are going to be of most value of you to take back to your classroom? I want you to just focus on one or two, because there's a lot here. And we teachers, what do we want to do? We want to do 87 things to make it better, and we want to do them all perfectly, and we're going to do them all tomorrow. We would never dream of setting our students up for failure like that. So don't do it to yourself. Pick one or two things to focus on, and once you've got those under your belt, you can bring in other things. Dear future self, here's what I have learned, and here is how I want to use it. I'm going to give you 1 minute and 1 second for this. Ready and go. And welcome back. As you're finishing up your last sentence, just a couple of quick debrief things. First of all, notice how the music changed when the intention changed. Mostly we've been listening to kind of upbeat, poppy type of music. We'll be listening to a lot more of that today. And that's when I want the energy to go up in the room. But when I wanted you to focus and have some quiet time to reflect, the music changed and it became something far more background level. It was instrumental, it was much more soothing. If I had put on Bon Jovi while asking you guys to write your quiet letters to yourself, you would have been rocking out and not writing your letters. So be purposeful in your music selection. I used to have Living on a Prayer in my playlist. I had to take it out because everyone just stopped and sang along, which was really fun to watch, but was not congruent to the purpose of what we were trying to do. So be specific with your music choices. The other thing, weird time intervals. You heard nothing but weird stuff from me today. 62 seconds, 47 seconds, a minute, and 1 second. That's deliberate. How many of you noticed those weird numbers when I first said them? I said 62 seconds, you said, what? It catches the attention. So I used to say, both when working with students and when working with adults, things like, take a few minutes to talk about this or that. And that worked for about 7 seconds. And very quickly the conversation started to devolve and go on to other things. So when you say something with a weird time limit, it catches the attention and it creates a sense of urgency for the task. 43 seconds, that's not very long. We better get to work. And so you end up getting more on-task behavior for more of the time. Now there is a second part to this strategy, and I will share it with you, but I can't tell you what it is right now. So don't let me walk out of here without telling you the second part to the funky number strategy, because you need to have it to use it effectively, but I cannot tell you right now. All right, we're going to be coming back to our Dear Future Self letters as we progress through these modules. But right now I want us to focus on holding our ground. Something we all have to do pretty much all day. classrooms. So, in your head, please think about if you had to create a one-sentence, perfect definition of effective classroom management. What would that sentence be? You can have all of the hyphens and semicolons you want, and you may either come up with it in your head or you can jot it down if that's easier for you, but I want you to think about your one-sentence, perfect definition of effective classroom management, and once you've got it, please share it with at least 2 or 3 people around you. Questions about what I want you to do? Ready and go. Welcome back. So you've had your sentence, you've heard from several of your colleagues, and at this time we're going to take all of that information we just got about classroom management, and we're going to imagine putting it in a giant blender and hit frappe. So you've got this giant glop of classroom management. And if you take that giant glop of classroom management and you pour it through a very large, very fine strainer, so that only one word can come out, and that is your one word essence of classroom management. So decide what your word is going to be. And in a moment when I say go, I want you to loudly and repeatedly shout that word at me so I can hear them all. I'm going to count down from 5 on my fingers. When I get it down to 0, please stop yelling at me. But I do want to hear it loud, proud, and over as soon as I say go. Are you ready? And go. Over and over again. Let me hear them. All right, I got them all. Thank you. So here are the words that I think I heard. It's magic. Now, even if your word isn't up here, it's still a good word. All of these words that I heard are really, really good words. In this case, I've got them arranged in a kind of a continuum. And even though they're all very different words, they all relate back to classroom management. We start in a place of things like authority and control and discipline, and move into things like procedures and consistency and clarity. Shifting our focus a little bit into things like engagement and relationships and trust, and finally, arriving in a place of compassion, forgiveness, and love. Now, what's interesting to me is that no matter where I go, I've never actually heard anybody shout my word at me. And that's okay. My word is no better or worse than anybody else. It's just different. It's very short. It's only 2 letters. My word is no. Ooh, your faces right now. But Katie, that is not a positive way to think about classroom management. What about assuming the best? We thought we liked you. You were wrong. But what's important isn't the word no. What's important is what the word no symbolizes to me. And to me, the word no represents that moment in my classroom where I, as a teacher, want one thing, and my students want something else. Please raise your hand if this has ever happened to you. Okay then, so no. I actually read this really interesting study that said that on average, teachers make 1,500 decisions every day. 1,500. And of those 1,500, 1,000 have a yes or a no answer. Out of those 1,000, the number of times the answer is no, 990. So no. I suggest that we can hold our ground with our students without having to beat them up about it, and without having to beat ourselves up about it, without having to go home and then recover. So I want you guys to get a sense of what that might feel like. So in a moment, we're going to do a role play. Can I get a woohoo on role play? That's about what I usually get. So listen, I know that nobody showed up this morning thinking, gee, I hope that crazy lady from North Carolina makes us do a role play on Saturday morning. Woohoo! I know. However, let me say this. Out of this role play comes one of my best loved and most frequently used strategies. And I think you're really going to love it. I think you're going to get value out of it. I promise you that if I didn't, I wouldn't be asking you to do it. So if you're coming to the role play today with a more reluctant feel, just try to come to it as much as you can with an open mind and an open heart. And if you totally hate it, hey, it's only 2 minutes long, so you will be just fine. All right? Here's what we're going to do. In a moment when I say go, everyone is going to stand and put their right hand up in the air, just like this with a locked elbow. This signifies that you are looking for a partner. You are going to find someone who is not at your table and who you have not already spoken to today. Now, we can cross this great divide here. It doesn't have to be the Sharks and the Jets in our classroom today. So, hands up means I'm looking for a partner. When you find a partner, give them a high five, put your hands down, introduce yourselves. So hands up, I'm looking for a partner. Hands down, I have found a partner. If you feel like you are the only person doing this, come and see me and I'll find you a family. Okay, come on down front. Once you have your partner, decide who will be the teacher and who will be the student. It doesn't matter what you choose, you're going to get a chance to do both. Teachers, let your student know at what age you would like them to role play. Now that is a lot of directions, so I'm going to put them up here for you to refer back to. We're going to start with that stand up, hand up, and finding a partner we haven't spoken to yet. Ready and go. Until you get a yes. If you are the teacher in my pair, please raise your hand. Who's the teacher? There we go. Okay. Teachers, you may say whatever you like to your students. As long as it is G-rated. This is a family show. And you hold your ground and do not let them go. Now, I realize that this is an unrealistic role play. I understand that there are times that our students ask us to leave the room, and we not only say yes, we help them to the door. And I also understand that there are times that our students ask us to leave, and we say no, and they leave anyway. But for the purposes of this role play, students, you cannot leave unless you get a yes from your teacher. Teachers, hold your ground and don't say yes. 36 seconds, ready and go.
Okay, all right. Can I go to the bathroom? I'm just gonna go pee my pants. I can't. It's on my foot. I can't do that. It's not fair. People, rush in right, please. Oh my God.
vocabulary. There are only two things that you may say to your student, and you can say them as many times as you like. You can switch up the order, but you have to say them word for word. The first thing you can say to your students is, no. And the other thing you can say to your students is, I understand. And the answer is no. 36 seconds of that limited vocabulary. Students, get creative. Ready and go.
Okay, so start over. I should use the rest of the But I'm ready to go. I'm not doing anything. Like you don't want access to have
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. All right, at this time, and I'm impressed, my friends, by your creativity today. I'm hearing some fabulous excuses. At this time, we are going to switch roles. Students, you are now teachers. Teachers, you are now students. My new teachers, time for a little revenge. We're going to do. We're going back to our original role play instructions. So, teachers, you are going to be holding your ground with G-rated language, but students, you are going to be making up your best and most creative excuses to leave the room, and you're going to keep at it until you get that yes. Now, new teachers, before you get started, please don't forget to tell your students at what age level you'd like them to role play. 36 seconds. Ready and go.
I'll do the same third grade. I mean, that's
I'm picturing the kids right now. Yeah, I have to have you write it down afterwards. I'm sorry, but
I'm on the bandit tree. You'll be fine. Paper towel,
All right, welcome back. We are moving into our final round of role play. New teachers, you are still teachers. New students, you are still students. But my new teachers, we're now going to go with that limited vocabulary. There are only two things you can say to your students. Everyone, please say them with me. The first thing you can say is no. And the second thing you can say is I understand. And the answer is no. Our final 36 seconds. Ready and go. All right, give your partner a high five. Thank you. High five, thank you, and find your seat. All right. Well, nobody told me I should have brought my Oscar statues to give out today, but that was some very impressive stuff I was seeing. So, first of all, I want to reiterate that I know that this was not a realistic situation. situation, okay? Because first of all, most of the reasons that you were hearing from your colleagues were such that you really, really wanted to say yes, all right?
I know.
I've got scissors in my eye. Can I go to the nurse? No? So please understand that the purpose of this role play is not to tell you that you cannot let your students leave the room. Of course you can. Of course you can. And I learned yesterday that when a student asks you, can I go to the bathroom? The answer is always yes. Much like Elsa, we're going to let them go. I'll stop singing now. So, it is okay to let our students leave the room. The point of the role play was not to always say no. The point of the role play was to feel that moment of discomfort. Okay? I once had a teacher, she gave the absolute best reason I have ever heard. The student sat in front of her teacher, stamped her foot, and said, "My 504 says I can have this." So yes, you can let your students leave the room, of course you can. But when we need to hold our ground with our students, we need to know how to do that and what that feels like. I'm curious to hear your experiences with having the limited vocabulary. How did that feel to you? Outside of the fact that you're like, but I really wanted to say yes. There were some very good biological reasons going on. But outside of that, how did that limited vocabulary make you feel? I saw a hand over here, yeah.
It's super uncomfortable because the situation was embarrassing or uncomfortable for the student, and I would understand because I am a female, so I would want to say yes, but I can't even explain like the timing, or originally it was like, we're in the lockdown. That's what she said before, but after that it's like, you can't even explain it.
I did hear a lot of, we're in a lockdown, I can't let you go. Because we're searching for explanations. We're searching for reasons why we're saying no, okay? Other feelings about having that limited vocabulary. Does anyone find it helpful? Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it because it's like you're not this back and forth, but, it's like, no, just no.
It cuts down on the amount of arguing, doesn't it? What were you going to say?
Well, I think sometimes, like, it's almost like we have to be justified in our answer, like, we're getting their permission to be okay with the no, and they are not the ones giving us permission. And I think that's where we lose track of what our role is in the classroom.
Absolutely. Because we don't have to explain our reasons to our students nearly as often as we think we do. It's okay for us to say no.
Right, because if we were on a lockdown, they would know we're on a lockdown and that they're not allowed to go out of the classroom. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't have to explain why they can't go, because they already know if we were saying no, why the answer is no.
That segues so beautifully into what I'm going to say. I feel like I ought to have paid you for that. When we are giving our students a no, an effective no is just that. It's a no, but it does not have any negative emotions tied to it. When we tell our students no, or we don't give them what they want, because we can't always give our students what they want, can we? We're not blaming them, and we're not humiliating them. We're not making them feel bad for wanting what they want. We're simply letting them know that they can't have it right now, and that's okay. An effective no has no anger. We're not getting angry, and that's hard when a student keeps pressing us. It's easy to get angry. We'll talk more about anger in a moment. But an effective no also has no explanation tied to it. Guys, we don't have to explain ourselves to our students nearly as often as we think we do. And it's hard for us because we associate caring with explaining. We don't want our students to think we're being mean. We want them to understand, I have a really good reason for this. It's not that I don't like you. It's not that I'm being mean. But we don't have to explain ourselves to students nearly as often as we think we do. Explaining and caring are not the same thing. They are not even distantly related cousins. They're not even in the same zip code. And I can care very much about a student's desire to know why without explaining myself. If you do have a student that you feel like needs to know the answer and will not be able to focus until they have the answer to why, we'll talk about how to handle that in a moment. But here's the deal. All students, no matter what age they are, when put in a situation where they know they're not going to get what they want, they make this right brain, meaningless, emotive blurt sound. And it has no meaning whatsoever, and it sounds like this. What? Why? You've heard that, right? Okay. But as teachers, we hear the word why. And what are we dedicated to? Teaching and explaining and clarifying democracy, fairness, and justice, all wonderful things. But if I then answer my student, just one more time, Shelly wants to leave the room, I tell her no, but I attach a reason to my no. Well, here's what's just happened. Shelly has now been pulled out of right brain emotive blurt mode into left brain arguing, deduction, logic. Oh, I can do that. And she's going to counter my reason with her reason. And then I've got to counter her reason with my reason, and she's going to counter that reason with a new reason, and before you know it, we are lost in the land of reasons. And when you're lost in the land of reasons, it can be very hard to get back out again. We don't have to explain ourselves to our students nearly as often as we think we do. And if I know in my heart, because I know my students, that Shelly will not be able to focus until she has the reason why, then I can delay my explanation until later. I can say, Shelly, I see that you really want to know why. In 5 minutes, when I've got everybody working in their groups, come and see me and I'll tell you why. I can delay my explanation until later. I am not going to disrupt my lesson to give her that explanation. And when I delay my explanation until later, two things. First of all, make the student come to you. Because I don't know about you, but I know that when I'm in my classroom, my brain is Google Chrome with 73 tabs open. And I know there's going to be something in my classroom that's going to make me forget or prevent me from going back to Shelly in 5 minutes if I tell her I'll go to her. Now Shelly feels disrespected. Now I've broken trust with Shelly because I said I was going to do something and I didn't do it. So make the student come to you. Secondly, this is on your timetable. Not when it's convenient for your student, when it's convenient for you. When you are not in the middle of trying to manage your classroom, when you're not directly instructing. So whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even if it's 30 seconds. The cool thing about this strategy is that in my experience, at least 85% of the time, if I delay even for 30 seconds explaining myself, the student never comes back to me to get the reason. And that's because as we make the student take that little piece of space, most of the time they realize they already know the reason why. They don't need me to repeat it to them. Now, if Shelly doesn't come to me after 5 minutes, I'm not going to go up to Shelly and say, oh, by the way, it's been 5 minutes, you want that reason now? Let it go. Because she doesn't need to hear it from me anymore. It's okay to say no. And it's okay to delay your explanations until later if you have a student that you really think won't be able to move forward until they've got that reason. So let's talk about our phrases. The first one, no. Sometimes I have folks say to me, but Katie, I don't like the word no. I think it's inherently negative. It should never be used in a classroom. And that's okay. Because you don't have to use no. I'm not here to change your educational philosophy today. If you don't like the word no, don't use the word no. You can say yes. You can say, yes, Elizabeth, you may leave in 15 minutes when class is over. You can say, yes, Hope, when, yes, if, yes, and. If you don't like the word no, as long as you're still holding your ground. Because our students will keep at us. In that role play, that moment of discomfort was magnified. You were kind of trapped in an elevator. Usually in our classrooms, when we make a decision, we say no, we move on, or the student moves out in some way. But in that role play, you were stuck in that moment of discomfort. Because we need to understand that sometimes our students will push us because they're hoping they can make us just uncomfortable enough that we're willing to move from a place that is what we want to have happen in our classroom to a place where they get what they want to have happen in the classroom. So having that discomfort and being forced to stay there for a while will prepare you for it when it happens to you in your classroom. I understand, and the answer is no. It's just good manners. It's gentler. It's very polite, saying, yes, I hear you, I understand, and the answer is still no. Make sure that you use the word and. Some teachers will switch to but. If you say, I understand, but the answer is no, what you're saying to that student, whether you mean to or not, is, oh, I know what you want. I just don't care. So make sure you're using the word and, okay? Now, I have two kids. They're 9 and 11, and the main pastime they have right now is tattling on each other. It's what they live for. And all day long, I've got, Veronica stuck her tongue out at me, Tristan won't get out of my room. And I have to that if I say to my children, thank you for letting me know, they'll go away. And it's because they don't need me to dish out harsh medieval justice. They just want to feel heard. And it's true for our students too. If we say to them, I understand, and the answer is no, they feel like, okay, my teacher hears me, my teacher knows what I want. And that's enough for a lot of our students. An effective no is like a swaddling blanket. It's both firm and soft. I know, it's adorable. The firmness is holding our ground and not letting our students push us into something that takes us out of being the authors of what happens in our classroom. It's not being afraid to say no. And the soft part of it is delaying our explanations until later, or using a phrase like, I understand, and the answer is no. But it's hard sometimes, especially when a student keeps on pushing and keeps on pushing. It can make us feel very angry in our classrooms. Raise your hand for me if you've ever felt angry at work. Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. Raise your hand if you have ever felt guilty at work. I will admit to this too. Last one, raise your hand for me if you have ever felt guilty about feeling angry at work. See how much you're not alone? We all have this. Anger is a natural emotion, and we can't always control when it comes upon us while we're teaching. But we can control how we handle it and how we handle it effectively in our classrooms. I want to teach you the RRR technique for managing your own feelings of anger. It's easy to remember because it sounds like that sound you make when you get really mad. You go, "Arr!" So in those moments where I'm really angry in my classroom, I use this strategy. So I need a volunteer. I just need your name and for you to sit there and be fabulous. Thank you so much. Kim is going to be my volunteer. Today, Kim is that kid. The one that is jumping up and down on my last nerve, and I have had it. I know that's not really you, but just for today, you're going to be that kid. So I'm going to role play for you how I can productively deal with my feelings of anger. Now I'm going to turn around and Hulk out here for a minute, and when I turn around, that's the part I want you to pay attention to. I've had people say, oh, you wouldn't really do that in your classroom. No, that's me showing you that I'm getting angry, so yeah, don't do that part. But the way I respond to Kim is what I want you to be looking at, okay? So here we go. Oh, Kim! Kim, please put that away and have a seat. Thank you. So that had several parts to it, and no, don't actually like scream your kids' names out in the classroom. That is not going to be congruent with your safety and your structure. But sometimes we feel like doing that, and that's natural, okay? The first thing we have to do is recognize that we are angry, because most of the time when we lose it with a kid and we blast them with our anger and our frustration, it's because we don't realize how angry we are until it's already too late. So try to learn to recognize when you are angry. The second thing is to reorient. There's two parts to that. The first thing, and you could not see me do this, but the last thing I said to myself in my head before I turned around to address Kim was, Kim wants to be successful in my classroom. Kim wants to do what I'm asking her to do. She just needs my help to get there. I'm assuming the best about Kim. And the second thing we have to do is we have got to calm down as fast as possible. Maybe you saw I took a really deep breath before I turned around to talk to Kim. For me, taking a deep breath makes me feel calmer. It helps me recenter. Someone once said to me, oh, you should try counting. It's really effective. And I tried it, and it just made me more angry. So if you've got something that makes you more angry, that people are like, oh, do this. Don't do it. Do what works best for you. Some people swear by counting. A deep breath, whatever it's going to take for you. All right? Calm yourself down. And then respond to the student. And when you respond, remember to go under the waves of student resistance and use your tone, volume, and posture. Now, it is okay in our classrooms to let our students know that we are angry from time to time, as long as we do it correctly. If I say to Kim, Kim, I am so angry at you right now, that's not going to be a good way to handle that, because I'm saying, Kim, I am angry at you. And Kim hears, my teacher doesn't like me. She's angry at me. It's me. There's nothing I can do about being me. If she doesn't like me, she's never going to like me. If instead I say, Kim, I'm very angry at your behavior right now. Well, her behavior is something she has the power to change. I am not angry at her as a human being. I am angry at the way she is choosing to behave. She can fix that. There's a way out. So if you do express your anger, make sure that you're expressing it at the behavior and not at the student. That will help you build your relationship back up. If you say you're angry at them, that will deteriorate your relationship. So, in our module about holding your ground, and 25 awesome geek points to whoever gets my picture reference here. In our module, we talked about how it's okay to just say no. We can delay our explanations until later. We can say, I understand, and the answer is no. An effective no is firm and soft, and does not carry any negative emotions with it. We talked about the RRR technique. So we're going to continue our future self letters. Dear future me, what is it that you most want and need to take back from this module on holding ground? What is going to be of the most value to you with your students in your classroom? I'm going to give you 48 seconds to continue that letter to self. Ready and go. So as you're finishing up that last sentence, neuroscience teaches us that no matter how much we are breaking up instructions, sometimes people just need a break. There's a great saying that I hope you'll all take to heart. When the bum is numb, the brain is the same. So we're going to go ahead and take a stretch break now because that's good for learning. We're going to take a 10-minute stretch break. You will know it's time to come back. I'm going to play 2 songs back to back. The first is We Are Family by Sister Sledge, because what are we as teachers if not a big family trying to do everything we can to help our students out? And then I'm going to play Help by the Beatles, because when it comes to teaching, what do we all need? A pay raise! Oh. I can't give you that, but I can give you some help. After Help finishes playing, I'm going to bring my chime and we're going to launch into our next module. I am here if you have any questions or want to talk about anything. Otherwise, I will see you in 10 minutes. Please enjoy your stretch break. technology for note-taking, go ahead and put it away at this time. We will have one more break before our session is over, so you can stay connected. We're going to jump now into the idea of teaching procedures, and this is really probably the best way that we can develop and flex that muscle of inner authority in our classrooms. We're going to start with some assumptions about teaching procedures, move into approaches about how we want to teach procedures, and then I will share with you roughly 9,000,000,004 different strategies that you can put on your buffet plate and take away with you and start using to make your classroom run a little bit more smoothly. So first of all, when I talk about procedures, I'm talking about things in our classroom that require some decision-making on the part of teachers and some learning on the part of the students. So things like, when are kids allowed to sharpen their pencils? How do we collect or redistribute graded work to students? So basically when I talk about procedures in the classroom, I'm talking about every single thing we ever do. It's all tied to a procedure. So our assumption about that is that procedures are the railroad tracks and content is the train. And when we take the time to lay down and polish and maintain our procedural railroad tracks, then the train of content has a speed and a direction in which it can go. If we pay attention to those railroad tracks, it's so much easier than trying to fix a derailed train. And we've all had those derailed trains in our classrooms where we've had phone calls and disciplinary issues and the office is called in, and it's a hot mess. But I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you and say that if you just have your procedural railroad tracks in order, you'll never have a derailed train in your classroom again. I can't promise that. It's teaching. There are going to be derailed trains from time to time. But I can tell you that if you pay attention to laying down and maintaining your procedural railroad tracks, you can significantly lengthen the amount of time between those derailed trains. And that's worth a lot to us. So, we're going to switch from trains to planes and talk about how to approach teaching procedures. Raise your hand if you've ever been in an airplane, ever in your life. Okay, like everybody. Have you ever once heard a flight attendant come on over the PA and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you remember the seatbelt fastening procedure, please raise your hand at this time. 1, 2, 3, that's everyone. We'll be skipping that part of the safety briefing today. Thank you for flying." Anyone? Do they ever do that? No. Do we wish they would? Yes. But they don't. They're so incredibly thorough about it. They tell you how to fasten your seatbelt. So it's auditory. They have their little example seatbelt and they show you how to fasten it, so it's visual. You grab your own seatbelt and you fasten it, so it's kinesthetic. And then they walk through the aisle and they do their check for understanding. And does everybody have their seatbelt fastened? And if there is not 100% mastery of that procedure, the plane does not take off. And that is the spirit in which we want to approach teaching procedures in our classroom. My challenge to you is to try to overteach procedures because it's almost impossible to do. In specifics, I want you to teach or polish 2 or more procedures every class or lesson you teach from now until you retire. Now, where are my kindergarten teachers? Kindergarten teachers. Okay, you guys are already doing this, so double it. In fact, everyone just double it because it's almost impossible to overteach procedures. And I hear the yeah, but Katie, ain't nobody got time for that. You don't have time for it. But I can do 5 in less than 30 seconds. Feel free to time me. Class, thank you for entering the classroom silently after lunch. Where are we going to put our lunch boxes? That's right, they go into our cubbies. In a moment, I'm going to ring my chime. What does that mean? Yes, Sally, it means we're going to begin silent reading. What is the maximum amount or the minimum amount of space that you can be away from somebody? That's right, Ralphie, 2 feet. You can have to be more than 2 feet. And as a reminder, I saw some people who did not have their hands to themselves in the hallway, so I want us to work on that next time we get in a line. Boom! All right? Thank you. So that was fun. We talked about entering the classroom silently. We talked about where to put our lunch boxes. We talked about the sound signal. We talked about how far away from our reading partners we had to be. And we talked about keeping our hands to ourselves in the hallway. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. I do recommend that you put it in your lesson plans. Not that you have to do a 6-point lesson plan for your procedures, but remember, neuroscience teaches us that when we write something down that we want to do, we're more likely to do it. That's why you're doing your Dear Future Self letters. Writing, even more than typing, solidifies and helps us retain things in our memory. So if you write down the procedures you plan to cover, you're much more likely to actually do it. Remember that students learn procedures the same way they learn content. So hit those multiple learning modalities. Make it auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, and practice, 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 practice. And yes, I promise you, your students will say things to you like, "Oh, teacher, why are you making us do this? We already did this, we know this." Sure they will. That's kids. But at that point, I like to put on my biggest brightest smile and say to my class, "Do you think Olympic athletes ever practice?" We are sharpening and maintaining our procedural edge in this classroom. We are going to remain in tip-top procedural condition. So stand up. And then we go for it. I have a colleague who took this to the next level, and she decided to make the 4 Olympic seating formations. And these are what they look like. Number 1 was in rows. Number 2 was students in pairs. Number 3 was students in a double horseshoe. And 4 was students in groups of 4. And she put these pictures up on the back wall of her classroom and had her students practice moving from formation to formation. She kept track of their times on the boards. They were always trying to beat their best time. And she said that by October, they could move from any seating formation to another in about 10 seconds. Yeah, that's really impressive. 10 seconds. So I was like, man, I'm gonna try that. So I tried that. And I started timing my students. And it took a little bit of time at the outset to teach them how to do it, and I used it at elementary. I will say that the only grade levels I haven't tried this with are K1, not because they can't do it, because they can, but because in my district, the kindergartners don't have desks, they've got great big tables, and I don't want to see a bunch of 5-year-olds doing that. It's a safety thing. If they have desks, they're perfectly capable of doing this, okay? What I loved about it was that it let me do more with my content. I had my students in groups of 4, and they were discussing what we had read. And then I wanted all the groups to report out and share their thoughts. That got really funky. Why? Because the students were all in groups and not paying attention to the person in front. So instead of having to yell at my students and get on their case about it, all I had to do was say, "Olympic seating formation number 1, go." 10 seconds later, they were back in rows and reporting out smooth. But the best part was that one of the groups sent their reporter up, and they had a point that nobody else in the room had thought of, including me. And it was brilliant. I wanted my groups to get back together and discuss it, and I will admit to you, time was, I never would have even considered it. Because by the time I stopped everybody and had them get back into their groups and explain what I wanted them to do and give them the time to talk about it and had them move their desks back, half my lesson's gone. But now all I had to say was Olympic seating formation number 4, go. And 10 seconds later, my students were back in their group and they were digging deeper into the content because these procedures were in place. The time we spend teaching procedures comes back to us because it allows us to do more in our classrooms that makes things possible that were not possible at first. I had a teacher try this and send in a video, and I want to share that with you because seeing is believing. These are some slightly older students, but it's still the same concept. And if you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a group where there is a student who is absent, and there's a procedure in place for that too. If you can't hear it, I will tell you when the teacher says go. Come on. Go. And there's the desk that's absent. And they're done. Wow. It's incredible what we can do. And I love the fact that this teacher had in place, if somebody in your group is absent, once you move your own desk, you move the desk of the kid that's absent. That helps me. I'm super clumsy. I guarantee I would have tripped over that desk. It's so smooth. They've practiced it. That railroad track is in beautiful working order. So we're going to do an activity now called Four Corners to focus on some of our procedural needs. In a moment when I say go, everyone's going to stand, you don't need anything in your hands, and you're going to move to one of 4 corners in this room. There are 4 little hand-drawn signs with different types of food up. In a magical, perfect world where you didn't have to pay for your own lunch, cook it, or clean up after it, what would you go and have for lunch today? Over here we have Mexican food. Back over here by our American Idol singer, we've got American food. Over here on this post we have Italian food. Please do not laugh at my hand-drawn spaghetti and meatballs. It's harder than you think. And then over here we have Chinese food. Now if, like me, your favorite food is Thai, I feel you, but it sure would make my life easier if you just pick one of the 4 types of food that I already have up, please and thank you. So in a moment when I say go, you're going to move to your favorite food corner. Ready and go. All right, welcome back. Well done. So, 4 corners. You can use this in several different ways within your classroom. You can use it to review content. So, for example, if I'm coming back in from recess and I'm going to teach math, I might hand slips of paper with equations on them out to my students as they walk in. Everyone has a silent start, figures out their equation solution, and walks to one of 4 corners of my room where different solutions are posted. They swap with a friend who's also in their corner, make sure everyone's standing in the right corner. I launch into my lesson. You can also use it a different way, the way I'm using it with you now. And this is for your students to find common ground with each other. Building relationships is so vital in our classrooms. And this is a way to help students find what they have in common with each other. So even if you're standing next to someone you have never seen before a day in your life, you know you've got something in common. You like the same kind of food, and that's somewhere to start. So in our groups, we are now going to break down into smaller groups of 4, 5, or 6, except you guys, you're fine. 4, 5, and 6. You're going to stand facing each other in a circle in your groups of 4, 5, and 6, and you're going to go around your circle naming challenging classroom procedures. When you're doing this, try to be specific. Instead of saying something like transitions are tough, say something specific like coming back after lunch or preparing to go to specials class, whatever it may happen to be. It's not a time to launch into why this procedure makes your life so miserable. Just say what it is and keep on going, because we do want to get around the circle twice. If you get around twice, and only if you get around twice, you can share some possible solutions. I want you to go around twice first, because if we stop and try to give solutions to the first person that goes, we're never going to get any further than that first person. So go around twice and then share your solutions. Any questions about what I want you to do in your groups of 4, 5, or 6? All right, fantastic. Let's do it. Ready and go. Please thank your group members and find your seats at this time. Thank your group members and come on back to your seats. Come on back to those seats. So chances are you heard your colleagues say some things that are also challenging for you, but you might a teacher standing next to a 5th grade teacher and found yourself talking about some very different procedures. What other procedures your group talked about? We've got strategies to help with all of them. Now, I will say that usually when I'm working with elementary teams, I tend to hear the same types of things as I'm walking around and kind of listening in. So we're going to talk now about how to teach and review procedures in a non-verbal way. Anytime we can do something in our classroom non-verbally, we're really getting ourselves ahead of the curve for our students, because so much of what we do in the classroom is verbal, and it gets exhausting. Also, we have students in our classroom for whom verbal instructions are not very helpful. Anyone that has an auditory processing disorder or has a language processing disorder. Students who are learning the language for the first time, students with attentional issues, students with behavioral issues. When they're not following your verbal directions, it may not be because they're being defiant. They may not have had time to process them, and they may not have even heard them. So when we can do things non-verbally, we're creating greater equity within our classrooms, and we're truly setting up an environment where all students are capable of success. So we're going to talk about rubrics and visuals. A lot of folks use rubrics for teaching content, but not many use them for procedures. But they're a good idea for procedures for all the same reasons that they work for content. They establish levels of proficiency. They make it clear what the expectations are. And when we as teachers are clear about framing what we want, we're so much more likely to get it. So one thing I hear pretty typically is lining up at the elementary level. Readiness to learn, like how are we behaving when our teacher is teaching? And dismissal formation, we hear about all of those things. Student volume is another one. And all of these can be handled with rubrics. I'll give you an example. For lining up, if I am teaching this procedure to my class for the first time, I'm going to have my students make a series of lines. I'll tell them to make me the worst line they could ever imagine. And it's brilliant. They're on the floor, their feet are in the air, it's a hot mess. I said, okay guys, great. That's exactly what I asked for, that's level 1. Now make it a little bit better, let's get up off the floor, but don't give me anything close to a line. Okay, fantastic, that's level 2. Let me maybe have everybody standing, but we're still not really doing a very good job. So maybe everybody's standing in a clump on the correct side of the room. Okay, fine, that's level 3. Show me almost perfect, but a couple of folks are messing around. Thank you, that's level 4. Show me the best line in the history of lines. By that time, they've had so much fun doing all of the bad things that they are overacting with this level 5 line. And they are like, ding! Great, guys, that's a 5. We need a 5 to start walking. So when we are doing that and we go live with it, and I have my students line up, I stand in front of the door, conveniently blocking their exit, and I look and I assess my line, and it's nonverbal. And I can help them a little bit non-verbally. And I haven't had to say a thing. Establishing rubrics like this helps make a common language within your class. Whatever expectations of lining up your students came to you with, whatever they got away with or didn't get away with in their old classes, you have your classroom's common language. And the students will start monitoring each other. You'll start to hear things like, come on guys, we're a 3, fix it! And so the students are holding each other and themselves accountable. We're adults, we know how to make a line. We want to put the responsibility on the students. Same thing with readiness to learn. What do I expect to see from my students while I am directly instructing them? Instead of lecturing them about it and interrupting my teaching, I let them go through the levels. And if I am teaching, when we're first practicing it, I might say something like, where are we right now? And for them, it's nonverbal. They show me where they think we are. Where do we need to be? And they adjust and they fix themselves until everyone is standing there or sitting there properly with their level 5 up. Yes?
My kids always start at a level 5 when we line up, as soon as they leave the door and on their way to lunch. How would you stop that?
Then I would make them stop because we need a 5 to walk. I'm sorry, we need to stop until we're 5. And then I would wait and I would show them where they are. And they'll be late to lunch once or twice. And then they'll realize, you know, I really don't want to be late to lunch. I really don't want to be late to recess. It takes practice, but you have to be willing to make them a little bit late. Now, if you're in a situation where you know you're going to hear about it if your kids come late to the cafeteria, and I understand that that's a reality, then they might have to be practicing lining up at a time when they would ordinarily be doing something else, preferably something they like to do. okay? Because they have to understand this is the expectation. This expectation is not negotiable. We are letting them know what they need. We are providing safety instruction. And when our students test us, they want us to pass the test. So readiness to learn. Once I've got my students into it, I don't even have to stop teaching. I pause. And I pick right back up from my lesson. So it continues the flow of content within the classroom, but I still get what I need behaviorally, all right? Dismissal formation, same thing. Student volume, I like to assign different levels to different social situations within the classroom. When we're taking a test, it's a level 1. Nobody is speaking. Group work is a level 2 because if everyone is talking in a normal speaking voice during group work, it quickly becomes too loud. My students who are presenting to the class, that's like right below recess volume for me because it helps them develop those communication skills. But you can adjust it however you want to, and it doesn't have to be 5. A rubric is anything between 3 and 5, depending on the needs of your students and what you're comfortable with. I like 5, it's my favorite number, so I use it. But where I teach in North Carolina, the grading system is 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of letter grades. So the students are very accustomed to that framework. A lot of teachers will use 1, 2, 3, 4. If you've got younger kids, you might just want to do 3. 2, and there's no differentiation between what is wholly unacceptable and what is expected. And 6 or more, and you start to lose the definition between the levels. So anywhere between 3 and 5, as you choose. So troubleshooting, if you try and it's not working, a few things. First of all, are you assuming the best? Do you truly believe that your students want to be successful at this? Or are you saying, these kids stink and they're not doing what I say? It's a normal way to react sometimes. Just remind yourself to assume the best, because if you assume that they want to be successful at this, but they're still not able to be successful, then chances are they need it broken down into smaller parts. Think about our 4 corners activity. First, I told you about how to choose your corner and let you go there. Then, once you were already there, I told you how to break up into your smaller groups and what you were going to do in those smaller groups. If I had tried to take you from your tables to your 4, 5, or 6 procedure sharing groups, by the time you got broken up into those groups, people would be like, wait, what are we doing here? And you're a room of highly educated adults. It's just too many directions. So break it down. Break it down even further than you think you need to if your students are not being successful. And finally, feed the students. You've got to give the students what they need if you want to get what you want. So if you have a volume rubric in your classroom, but you keep everybody on level 2 constantly, the other numbers just aren't going to work. If you walk into your classroom with the attitude of, I am going to lecture to you all for the next 53 minutes, and your job is to sit there silently and absorb my knowledge. Well, good luck. Because that's not how people learn. It's not how you learn. It's not how I learn. It's not how our kids learn. If I came in here and just talked at you from 8:30 to 11:30, you would hate me by the time we were done. And rightfully so. Because that's not how we learn. Think about how many times you've had the opportunity to talk and move. We need that, and our students need it too. We're going to skip that and come back to it in a minute, because I want to talk with you about visuals. Visuals are a great way to reinforce teaching procedures and even classroom rules. They're nonverbal, and they really bring it home. So with the lining up idea that I told you, snap a picture of the kids in each level of line, print them out, post them over by your door, because now your students have a visual reminder of what those levels look like. It's an automatic review of the procedure. It's a great reminder, and it's also helpful when you get new students that come in and have missed the initial teaching. This is a readiness to learn rubric. This teacher had this on his back wall. He chose to put the words next to what he expected. You can do that or not, as you choose. The kids love seeing pictures of themselves in the classroom. And then what do kids always say when they first walk in our classrooms in the morning? What are we going to do today? All right? This is our project setup. It could be any project setup. What are we going to do today? And you can either tell them 27 times, or you can do what I used to do, which was say, wait till everyone gets here, and then I only have to say it once. And I would say that 27 times. So teach the students to rely on a visual. Say, see if you can match the picture on the screen. And so they do it, and the next day they come in, and they're looking for the picture. But we all have that kid in our class, and that kid goes, what are we going to do today? And the other students say, dude, would you look at the screen? So the little dude looks at the screen, and he matches it. Third day, day they come in, they're all looking for that visual. If you're going to do this, make sure that you are not undercutting your own work. Don't teach students that they don't have to rely on the visual. So here we have a science lab set up, and I've got my student in my class, I've got Mimi. Mimi is in my class, Mimi does not have her goggles. If I say, hey Mimi, don't forget your goggles, well, now she's got her goggles, but I've just taught her that she can ignore the visual. Because even if she doesn't pay attention to it, I'm still going to get her where she needs to be. So instead, I like to number the different components. And I'll say, hey Mimi, number 4. Now Mimi has to go back to the visual to see what number 4 is. She's still going to have what she needs. She's still going to be safe. But I'm teaching her she must rely on the visual. You can do this a variety of different ways. It doesn't have to be digital photographs. You could do paper slides. You could just draw it on the board or on a piece of construction paper or butcher paper. If you are going to use pictures of your students, just check with the admin. Make sure all the photographic release paperwork is well in order. Because as teachers, we all have to CYA. If you don't know what that is, ask your neighbors. I can't tell you. You can use clip art if you like. But guys, be careful. Because the picture on the left clearly says, no cell phones. But the picture on the right, any one of my students worth their salt is going to look at and say, oh, so we can have gum as long as we don't blow bubbles. And tomorrow I'm looking for a new visual. It's a great way to help our meanderers in the morning, the ones that take 20 minutes to take their book bag off and hang it up. Because instead of getting on that student's case over and over again, I can simply say, Ralphie, you're on a 2, get to 3, please. It sends him back to the visual, and it redirects him. And it's not me having to say, Ralphie, I just can't believe you've already been here for 15 minutes and all you've done is hung up your book bag. What are you thinking? You've got to get moving. Ralphie, go from 2 to 3, please. And a lot of times when I'm first teaching it, I'll put up the visual at the end of the day, and I'll say, hey guys, I'm going to put this up first thing tomorrow morning. If you can match it within 27 seconds of the bell, I'll give you 5 minutes of homework avoidance time. That means they get the last 5 minutes of class to work on their homework and have less to do when they actually go home. Now, they were going to do that anyway, but they don't know that. You can have your students create the visuals themselves and put them up around the room, and now you have the procedure police, because none of your students are going to let any other student ignore the visual that they themselves created. And don't make it hard on yourself by taking a picture of the actual page in the book. Make it easy on yourself with a text box, a sticky note, whatever you choose to use. And just look at these sweet faces. How much fun did these kids have? This was so good we put it on the cover of our book about using rubrics and visuals. It's so cute. Re-entering class. This is a procedure. It's not a rubric, but it is a procedure. This is how we come back into class. These kids are not ready. Where am I going to hang this, everybody? Outside of my classroom. It does me no good in my classroom, so be specific about where you place your visuals. Be thoughtful. This is a rubric for volume that was sent to us by a teacher that created it. Just show some clip art. And it really cuts down on classroom arguing. This fine, upstanding young gentleman is not tardy. This little joker, on the other hand, with one hand and one foot in my classroom, he's tardy. If this kid walks into my classroom with one hand and one foot and the bell has finished ringing and he wants to argue with me about how he's not tardy, all I do is just this. And then if I have my student lawyers in my classroom that want to come to the defense of their friends, oh, but Miss Anderson, but Ralphie, but the bell, but this, but that. That's all I have to do. They haven't got a leg to stand on. It's clearly illustrated what the expectation is. You meet it or you don't. It's fun for classroom rules. The kids have a blast, and I love this little guy over here doing 5 deals at once, future CEO. And don't you wish your bookshelves looked like this? I did an experiment this year where I put this up, but I didn't actually say anything to my students about it my last year. And usually when I tell them, hey, there's a picture, I want you guys to match it, they've got it in 2 days' time. Last year I didn't say anything about it. I wanted to see what would happen. Within 5 days they were matching it anyway, because the power of visuals is so strong. You want a clean sink? Put up a picture of a clean sink. Oh, kindergarten teachers, it's for you. The block center. So awful. But put a picture of a clean carpet where you want a clean carpet. And look how specific because she framed expectations clearly. And when our students don't understand our definition of clean, this teacher had a very specific thing she wanted for dismissal. This was a middle school teacher. I saw this and I went, because it's more strict than I would normally be, but that's okay. I'm not here to change your educational philosophy. Nor do I necessarily recommend putting the word butts on anything you're going to put in front of students, but you know, you do you. She also made a rubric. When you see it, it's number 2. Even though it was so specific, she got it from her students. She framed what she wanted, and so she got it. Doesn't matter if it's really strict or really specific, you can get your students to do it. And if you don't want to use pictures of your kids, take a picture of what you want your room to look like when everybody's gone. You don't leave until it looks like this. Oh, this one saved me so much time. I would spend 15 minutes after school every day untangling cords and plugging things in so that things would work the next day. This was a lifesaver. But this one's my favorite because this is an elementary school staff who got together after a day like this and decided to make their own lining up rubric with the staff. And they took pictures of it and they posted them all around the school. And now there's a universal language throughout the entire school. The kids love it because they love to see their teachers acting a fool. But think about how much time that saves you if everyone in the school, as they move from grade level to grade level, knows what the expectations are for the hallway and the cafeteria and the playground and the library. It's good stuff. So take a moment with the Consider Cat, and we're going to pause for 53 seconds. And I want you to think about which procedure in your classroom or school you could use a rubric or a visual with. Flesh it out so you can take it back with you on Monday. If it's a rubric, what are the levels going to look like? If it's a visual, sketch yourself out what it might look like. You don't have to be Renoir to make this work. Just use stick people and it's totally fine. But I want you to develop it so you can take it back with you. 53 seconds for this. Ready and go. Wide or department-wide policy, you might take this idea back to your school and see if you can set up some school-wide policies for this. So there is actually a book about this that has all of these images, videos of the authors talking about how to teach it. It's called Picture This, and as I mentioned, that one really cute picture did make the cover. I've got 2 of these to give away today, and then if you don't win one, then they are here for you guys if you would like to purchase one. It's got the online digital library, which is really cool because you can go and get all of the photographs and either use them as they are, modify them a little bit. If you don't want to reinvent the wheel and do it with pictures of your own students, you can just use the pictures that we already have there. We also have our Green Conscious Classroom Management book, which I see several of you guys already have. Just wanted to remind you there is an online content library there too, a code and a website in the back of the book. If you're not using that and you have questions about how to use it, please come and see me because we do want to make sure you're getting everything out of that. So we're going to talk now about how to make positive connections with our students, okay? Our time is flying by today. I don't know where it's gone. I want to share with you a strategy called the 2x10, but first, let's talk about some things that you're already doing to make connections with your students. What do you guys already do? I know you're doing a lot. Even if it seems simple.
Morning meetings.
Morning meetings where we all can kind of check in. You can take the temperature of the room. How are your students doing that day? What else?
Tell them good morning and ask them how their night was.
Yeah, good morning. How was your night last night? It validates our students, lets them know that we care, that they are with us in the classroom. What else can we do? Yeah.
On top of sharing their stories, I open up a little bit about mine.
Yeah, opening up about yourself. Now, we all know that we can do that to excess and that we shouldn't do that, but don't let that keep you from sharing your own life with your students, because that helps them see you as a human being too. So I'll hand over here.
Always check in to see if they've eaten.
Make sure they've eaten. It's sad that we have to do that, but make sure they've had something to eat. I've bought many of my students food, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
In the morning, we either do a hand fist bump or a dab.
A fist bump or a dab. I love that. My kids would love to be in your class. I've seen it done high five, handshake, or hug. I love it when there's that kind of physical greeting in the morning, whatever it is, and when we let our students have the choice of what it is. It teaches bodily autonomy, and it teaches consent, and it's vital that we do that. We cannot assume that all of our students want a hug from us. A lot of them do, but teach consent, teach the autonomy. It's your body, you choose what happens with it. But all human beings crave physical contact, and our most at-risk kids are the ones that need it the most. So thank you to those of you that are making that happen in your classrooms. And there are so many wonderful things that we can do. We could spend the whole rest of our time together talking about how we make connections. But there are some kids that make it really hard to connect with them because they're very prickly or standoffish, or they shut us down at every turn. And we need to make connections with those kids most of all. So how do we make a connection with the kid that doesn't want to connect with us? There's a strategy called the 2x10, and it comes to us from the research of a gentleman named Raymond Fladowski, and it works like this. With that kid, that prickly, standoffish, I want nothing to do with you kid, have a 2-minute personal conversation with them on a topic of their choosing, as long as it's school appropriate, 10 days in a row. Yeah, but Katie, I don't have time for that. Okay, fine. Can you spare 45 seconds for this kid? Can you spare 30? Because the research shows us that it is the continuing nature of the conversation that makes the difference, rather than the cumulative amount of time. So therefore, it is better to have 30 seconds every day for 10 days in a row than one 5-minute conversation. You don't build a relationship over one conversation. It's got to be those 10 days, okay? So you pick that kid, and today that kid is, who haven't I talked to today? I haven't talked to you. Tell me your name. Andrea. Andrea is that kid. I've had a real hard time connecting with her. I'm going to use the 2x10. Do not do the following. Andrea, it's 11 o'clock and time for our 2-minute personal conversation. Because it's creepy, folks. Don't do it. I need to make it more organic. I might simply tell her like, hey, Andrea, what's up today? If 95% of my conversations with Andrea up to this point in the school year have been of a disciplinary or a corrective nature, she may be thinking, why do you want to know? And how are you going to use this against me today? She may shut me down again. Okay, fine, that's not day one. I approach her again the next day. Hey, how was your night last night, Andrea? Psh. Okay, fine, that's still not day one, but now I'm going to employ some subterfuge, because I know that she's going to be talking to her friend, Jasmine. And while I'm checking homework, I'm going to be listening in to see what Andrea and Jasmine are talking about. So I'm checking homework, I'm spying, I'm doing recon, I'm listening in, I'm checking homework. And maybe Jasmine and Andrea were talking about, I don't know, horses. So now I go up to Andrea later on and I'm like, hey, tell me about horses. This shows her that it's a conversation that is not part of the teacher-student power dichotomy. It's something that she's excited about. It's something I don't know about, so she has the opportunity to teach me. Okay? Now, I know nothing about horses, but my good friend Google does. And I'm not going to come back to Andrea the next day and spend the whole 2 minutes telling her what I learned about horses, because she's in the driver's seat. I'm only going to use that information if the conversation lags, and I'm trying to draw her out a little bit more. Day 5, I'm ready to talk about horses. Andrea no longer wants to talk wants to talk about basket weaving. Okay, fine. Fine. I'm right there with her. Day 11, she comes with me. Hey, can we talk about basket weaving, Mrs. Anderson? I'm sorry, Andrea. Your 10 days are over. Don't do that either, okay? You can employ other strategies. Yes, Andrea, we can talk about basket weaving in 12 minutes when class is over. Yes, I'd love to talk with you about basket weaving. Come a few minutes early to class tomorrow. We'll talk about it. You don't have to stop your lesson for it. But what's cool is that even if you had to try to talk yourself in to having these conversations, even if you didn't really want to connect with this kid, by the time the 10 days are over, the connection will be there. The research tells us that you can see up to an 85% improvement in behavior. And not just from Andrea, but the whole class does better. Because there's less disruption coming from Andrea. Everyone's doing better. And you've reached out to that kid that probably needs it the most. Please put this strategy on your plate. It can save a kid. It really can. We are going to take a 5-minute stretch break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about consequences. During this 5-minute stretch break, if you would like to win a free copy of Picture This, please engage with us on social media. Follow or like us and give us a post. What's something you've learned today? What's something you want to try? When our 5-minute break is over, we'll come back together. Facebook is Conscious Teaching. Twitter is @Conscious Teaching with no E and A because character limitations. And Instagram is Conscious_Teaching. Every platform is another entry. I will see you in 5 minutes. The last song you will hear is 3 Little Birds by Bob Marley because we're going to talk about consequences. And guys, every little thing's going to be all right. Oh, are you blocked on
Because
social
we're at a
media?
school site. So even if we turn off our Wi-Fi, we're at a school site. We can't access it.
Wow.
No, wait. Okay, I'm working on it.
ideas. And if you have something you use that you love or it works out really well and you send us a picture or tell us your story, we will blow you up like the rock star you are on our social media. So thank you guys for following along with us. Our winners of the Picture This book from Twitter, Tiffany Moyes. Tiffany, yay! Congratulations. Well done. And then our other one from Instagram, we have Crystal Marie. That's you. Congratulations. Now, if you did not win one and you would like to have one, we are selling them for $20 today. It's cheaper than you can get them even on our website or Amazon. So they're up here if you want to take a look at them later. But I don't like to sell stuff. I like to teach stuff. So let's move along. All right. Consequences. No, really, consequences. Don't you love when your technology stops working right in the middle of when you need it? We've all had that time. Okay. So no matter what we do, from time to time, we are going to have to give consequences because kids are going to make some funky choices. So when we use consequences, I want you to always think of the word choice. Whenever you hear consequence, I want you to also think of the word choice because we need to present consequences to our students like choices, okay? So our first assumption when it comes to consequences is this. There are no punishments. There are only consequences. And consequences are tools that we use to teach behavior and responsibility. Guys, we are not in the business of punishing kids. And I know that it's a very normal feeling when you've got a kid that has been so irritating to you all day and you get to the point where you're like, you have made my day so miserable, I want to make yours miserable too. That is a normal human feeling that it's okay for us to feel and then release. Because that's not a productive way to deal with our challenging students. We're trying to teach them the right way to go. We're trying to teach them to pause and make a better choice. We're trying to teach them responsibility for their actions. So when we think about consequences, we need to teach our students, especially at the elementary level, that the choices you make result in consequences, and they're not always negative. When you make positive, productive choices, you reap the sweet fruit from that. You get respect, you get praise, you get skills mastery. People want to be around you. But when you make negative, unproductive choices, you're going to reap some bitter fruit from that. You're going to have teacher proximity to you at all times. You're going to have a phone call home or detention or have your seat changed, things you don't want to have happen. The sooner we can teach our students that their choices matter and that their choices directly result in how their life experience is going to be, the greater service we are doing them. And what a gift to them to teach them that in our low-stakes elementary environment where we are loving and supporting them and helping them see the right way. Because if they don't learn this and they get into middle school, high school, real world, their choices, especially their poor choices, can have long-term, life-altering consequences. We can help prevent that. As a teacher, what I want to do is use the gentlest possible consequence to get my student to pause and make a new choice. So if, for example, I have in my classroom, what's your name? Michelle. Michelle is in my classroom, and Michelle is not working on her assignment. I'm not going to take it straight to DEFCON 5. I'm going to try something gentle to get her to pause and make a better choice. I might just say her name, Michelle. Because she knows what she's not doing, and I know what she's not doing. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but if it doesn't, I'm going to keep trying something else gentle. Maybe I will give her the teacher look. The I mean business look. You know the one. If you find that your teacher look starts to lose its effectiveness throughout the year, try switching eyebrows. Very effective strategy. All right. Michelle is impervious to my teacher look. It hasn't worked. Okay, fine. I'm going to step it up a little bit, but it's still going to be gentle. I might use my proximity, and I might come over and start teaching from the general vicinity of Michelle's seat. And I look at the paper, and I look at Michelle. And I look at the paper, and I look at Michelle. And I look at the paper, and I look at Michelle. Now, if Michelle picks up her pen and starts working happened in her brain. She is thinking to herself, why is Mrs. Anderson standing so close to me? And how do I get Mrs. Anderson to go away from me? I can work on the assignment. Do I want to work on the assignment? I don't really want to work on the assignment. But I do want Mrs. Anderson to go away from me. Fine, I'll work on the assignment. And we're done. And I barely had to do anything. It didn't have to get confrontational. I just helped her pause and make a better choice. Because the truth of the matter is, my friends, we have no control over kids. I wish we did, but we don't. Sometimes we have the illusion of control, but we have no control over kids. They have the power of choice. The control that we do have comes from the consequences that we attach to their choices. And this is what helps them learn that responsibility and better behavior. Now, in my example with Michelle, proximity was very effective. But if in my class I have Rosa, so Rosa is in my class. And if I use my proximity with Rosa, well, Rosa is a very social human being. And Rosa is going to use my proximity as an excuse. Oh, Miss Anderson wants to talk to me. So she's going to tell me all about what she saw on her favorite TV show last night. And oh my gosh, am I watching it? Why am I not watching it? You've got to watch it, Mrs. Anderson. This is not a consequence for her. It doesn't make her a little uncomfortable, so she's going to pause and make a better choice. She just wants to party, okay? It's not an appropriate consequence for Rosa. By the same token, I have in my classroom, is it Brianna or Brianna?
The first one.
Brianna. Brianna's in my classroom. Brianna has a tender heart. And if I say her name from across the classroom, it is going to absolutely crush her. She's going to be so mortified. She might actually burst into tears. That's not a gentle consequence for Brianna. So, I need to make sure that I have the power and the support in my classroom to differentiate my discipline in the same way I am expected to differentiate my instruction. This is why lockstep consequence hierarchies simply do not work. When you only have one choice of what consequence a kid gets on every level of severity, because not all consequences affect kids in the same way. Instead, what we want is something more like a tiered consequence hierarchy, where there are multiple choices at each level of severity, where we might be giving a verbal warning, or a teacher look, or using proximity, or. And when we step it up to the next tier, they might change their seat, or step outside, or do a behavior journal, or have a timeout, or. And that allows me to meet my students where they are and use consequences more effectively. Now, a tiered consequence hierarchy is not something you want to try to be making up on the fly when you're already in that tough moment. I'm looking at our time. I have more to tell you. So I'm going to leave you with this piece of encouragement. At some point between now and the end of next week, sit down either by yourself, with a mentor, with a teammate, and think about what your tiered consequence hierarchy might look like. What other things that you are either already doing, or you are comfortable trying, or are things that are expectations within your school, could you add to each tier to help you develop your tiered consequence hierarchy? If you're not sure and you have the green book, you can look at page 213, but I want to share with you now our tiered consequence hierarchy. It's just a generic one that we came up with at Conscious Teaching. You can get this from the website, consciousteaching.com. If you click on free resources, you can print out your own copy. It's a great starting place for you as you're developing your own tiered consequence hierarchy. But I want to point out to you a few things. First of all, where are the most choices? On the first tier. I want to be as gentle as I can. It's better for my classroom, it's better for my students. And I might try 3 or 4 things on the gentle tier before I go up to the mild tier. And I might try 2, 3, 4 things there before I ever move on to the moderate tier. You'll notice that call home is not a consequence in and of itself, because in my opinion, take it or leave it, My consequences, I prefer to be things that I can control within my classroom. And I cannot always control what's going to happen when I call home. I can hope that the parent's going to talk to their kid, they're going to come in a whole new kid. But I have been fussed out by parents for calling them. And if I was just doing my job, their kid wouldn't be acting up and don't call again. That was a fun conversation. And there have been times when I have chosen not to call home because I was afraid of what was going to happen to my kid if I did. If we get to the red tier, obviously we do have to call home. But if you have concerns about your student safety, you can bring in a social worker, a school psychologist, an administrator. Okay? That's just my 2 cents on that. But take it or leave it, however you feel. Sometimes we have students in our classroom and they are being so distracting and distractible, but we know they can't help it. Something serious is going on at home, be it positive or negative, okay? Mom's having a new baby today. Their dog died yesterday. Their parents didn't give them their medication before they came to school. In that situation, we need special consequences that are in no way punitive, but just help redirect so we can get our classroom back together. I want to share one of those with you. The runaround, my favorite version of this is paper clipping. Here's how paper clipping works. I've got a student, they cannot hold it together. I know it's not their fault. They don't need a punishment, they just need some help getting back on track. And today that student is Tess. Tess cannot hold it together. My whole classroom is being gone crazy just because of her. Okay, fine. I know she can't help it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, hey, Tess, I completely forgot that I owe Mr. Finks, my co-teacher, these 4 paper clips. Would you take them to him, please? Thank you so much. And Tess looks at the paper clips in her hand. She goes, okay. And she takes the paper clips to Mr. Finks' room. Mr. Finks receives her, says, Tess, thank you so much. I thought Miss Anderson was never going to return my paper clips. If you would have a seat, I've got something to send back to her. Let me get my class going. I'll be right with you. Okay, fine. Because paper clipping is an understanding between me and Mr. Finks. And he knows that if I send him a student with paper clips in his or her hand, the number of paper clips corresponds to the number of minutes I want him to hold said students before sending them back to me. After 4 minutes' time, Mr. Finks says, I told Miss Anderson I would give her this rubber band. Please take it back. Tess takes it back to me. I said, good, thank you so much. While she's been gone, I have 4 minutes plus travel time. I can get my class back in 4 minutes. 4 minutes is gold to me as a teacher. Once I've got my class back on task and Tess comes back, I can give her the one-on-one attention she so desperately needs today. Now, my friends, there are limits. You may not send your students with boxes of paper clips to your colleagues. 5. 5's the limit. I understand, and the answer is no. You can't do it. 5 paper clips is the limit. And 1 paper clip simply means don't hold the student, just send them on back to me. Because what this does for our students is it allows them to get up and move around. They get a change of scenery. They get to be somewhere else. They get to get out of whatever mind space they're in. And then when they come back, I have the ability to give them what they need. Everybody wins. The rest of my students get a non-distracting learning environment. I get regained control of my classroom. My student that needs me gets one-on-one with me. So everybody wins in this. Obviously, we don't use this with students that we think are going to be a flight risk. And this is not an everyday strategy. It's really one of those break glass in case of emergency strategies. If you feel like you're needing to paperclip a kid every week, there's something else going on, and work with your team and your student support staff to find out what the underlying issue is. But a lot of folks like paperclipping and choose to add to their buffet plates. So let's now talk about what we do when we have a very resistant student, okay? When we have a student and we need to deal with consequences, here's an effective way to do it. First of all, there should be no surprise, you assume the best. Assume the best about this student. This student wants to succeed for me. Something is in the way of them being there, okay? So my student Samuel is distracting everybody else at his table. I know Samuel wants to succeed. I've got to help him get there. And then I'm going to get on my soft eyes and my soft voice. Nonverbal communications make up anywhere from 80 to 95% of communication in the classroom, depending on which studies you read. So if I can't keep the anger and frustration out of my voice when I'm talking to my students, I am escalating things, and I'm making it worse. And I am undermining my safety and structure, not just for Samuel, but for everyone else who's seeing me have a negative interaction with him. Okay? So one thing you can do is you can use your soft eyes and your soft voice, and it works like this. In those tough moments with students, try to focus on keeping all of the muscles around your eyes perfectly calm and neutral, the way mine are right now. Because apparently it is a physiological impossibility to have an edge in your voice if your eyes are soft. I did not believe this when I first heard it, and then I went home and tried it in front of a mirror. And it was very illuminating. And I want you guys to have this experience. So in a moment when I say go, you're just going to turn to someone near you at your table. You're going to take turns saying back and forth to each other things that you would say in the classroom if you were angry. I said, stop it! But keep your eye muscles perfectly smooth and calm and see what it does to your voice. Now, if you don't want to yell at your friends today, I hear you. You can do seething frustration instead. I said, put it away. But with your eye muscles perfectly soft and smooth. Now, partners, when your person is giving you that angry thing, they will think they are keeping their eye muscles perfectly neutral. They will not be keeping their eye muscles perfectly neutral, so be honest with them and tell them what you see. 38 seconds to practice soft eyes, soft voice with a partner. Ready and go. Keep practicing this one, and I will tell you, I have literally done things in my classroom as I was learning it. I was like, Samuel, 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 Samuel. And yes, my students were like, what is she doing? But that's okay. It's okay, because it also helps them distract them from the fact that we're in an uncomfortable disciplinary moment. So once I have my positive assumptions in my heart, and I have my soft eyes and my soft voice on my face, I am going to make my students' choices clear. Samuel, you have a choice right now. You can stop distracting your group, and nothing else needs to happen, or you are choosing to go and work by yourself in the back of the room. Okay. Now, once I make my students' choices clear, I respect the choice they make. This is the hardest part. If Samuel says, oh, I'm going to be good, and I say, great, Samuel, glad to hear it, and 30 seconds later, he's back to distracting his group again, I'm going to respect the choice he made, and I'm going to give him the consequence. Samuel, please go to the back of the room. Oh, but no, I'll be good, I'll be good. I'm sorry, that choice is no longer on the table. What I see a lot is we offer the choice. We give him the choice, we make it clear. We walk away. The kid chooses the other way. Okay, now Samuel, don't forget what I said. If you keep talking, I'm going to move you. Oh, I'm going to be good, I'm going to be good. 30 seconds later, Samuel, I will move you. Oh, will I? Will I really? Because haven't I said that 3 times and there he still sits? They get the choice one time. And they choose what we want them to choose. Or they choose the other way. There's no third alternative. And I'm not going to be afraid to take it all the way. And I'm going to do it gently. but I want my students to know that I will gently take it all the way. So we give the consequence. Once I've given the consequence, now Samuel is in the back of the room, and hey, guess what? He's now distracting this group from his seat at the back of the room. So now Samuel has a new set of choices. Samuel, you have a choice right now. If you continue to distract this group, you're choosing to step into the hallway with me and have a private conversation. If you choose to be productive and, hey, I'm here to help you, I'll do whatever you want, then you can go back to your original seat. What would you like to choose? Now, if Samuel is in a right brain, emotive, anxious, angry state, I'm going to walk away before asking him for his decision. Because when our students are all worked up, they do not have the space to make that rational, calm decision. I've got to give him the space so he can make a rational, calm decision. If I don't, oh, he'd rather go to jail than do what I tell him to do. Okay? So don't be afraid to walk away and delay him answering. But remember to respect the choice the student makes. If Samuel chooses to continue distracting the group, he's choosing to step out with me. Now, what if a student doesn't answer you? You say you have a choice right now, and they don't answer you. Maybe they even give you a little bit of attitude.
That is their choice.
Well, if they stop distracting their group, that's their choice. Respect the choice they've made. You've got to decide if you want to die on that hill of having them suck their teeth at you when they're doing what you want them to do. Does it need to be a power struggle? Or are you content with the fact that they are doing what you need them to do? That's up to you. My personal idea is if they are making the bigger, better choice, I'm going to overlook because sometimes they need to express themselves. Sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. Sometimes they feel like they need to save face. If it continues, maybe later we'll have a conversation about disrespect. But if they're doing what I asked them to do, I'm good. Now, if a student doesn't answer us and continues to do the undesirable behavior, they have made their choice. Respect the choice they've made. And it continues in this pattern until the student either makes a better choice for a longer period of time, or they are removed from the learning in some way, whether it's the hallway, or a colleague's classroom, or the office. And when I first heard this, I did not like it. I said, no, I am Samuel's teacher, and if I remove him from my learning environment, he's not learning, and I am failing him. It is my responsibility to teach him. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized if I am implementing with fidelity this tiered consequence hierarchy, if he has had all of these gentle and mild and moderate opportunities to make the right choice, and he is still to the point where he's being removed, he's not learning from me right now anyway. I'll come right back to you. And if he's not learning, and if he's taking up that much time and that much effort, what is he doing to the learning of everybody else in the classroom? And do I not have just as much responsibility to the rest of the students in my classroom as I do to Samuel? And that's what made me okay with having the student be removed, if necessary. Most of the time, it's not going to happen, because they're going to make a better choice earlier in your tiered consequence hierarchy. But don't be afraid to gently take it all the way.
Just asking if you give them the choice to go to the back of the room and they just do this and say, I'm not moving.
Then you give them a new set of consequences. We are not going to physically pick students up and move them, obviously, but we're going to continue on with this pattern. Hopefully, it will get to the point where they will make that better choice. We're going to give them the space to be rational, but if they are not going to make that better choice, we are going to gently take it all the way, because we are the authors of what happens in our classroom. So in a nutshell, I told you the jokes don't get any better. In a nutshell, what I want you to remember about consequences is this phrase, you have a choice right now. Because we want to be teaching the power of choice, and we want to genuinely be offering that choice and not backing a kid into a corner. We don't need to become a power struggle, okay? If you back any creature into a corner, they're going to fight you. You're not going under the waves of student resistance, so make sure you're genuinely offering a choice. Now, we have been reflecting all day. Quickly, our ongoing support. You have my email address on your handout, and I would love for you to use it. Anytime you want to workshop something, talk about something a little bit more, thank you. say, hey, I want to use this thing, but I don't remember what you said, please shoot me an email. I used to tell my students, once you're one of my kids, you're always one of my kids. Once I've been a part of your training, you are always important to me. Please email me. I want to hear from you. We've got our social media with lots and lots of really cool tips and strategies. We've got our books. If you want a copy of picture of this, come and see me. If you go to consciousteaching.com, you can sign up for our newsletter. Our latest one had a bunch of really cool stuff about how to control student volume, including apps you can use. But I do hope that you will reach out to me in the future. Our final procedure before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your Saturday is this.